and welcome to our meeting tonight. Welcoming you to the school committee meeting of Tuesday, May 11th, 2021. As you can see, we have a couple of us in the studio. You may also notice that we are wearing masks at the request of the Department of Health. So we will be wearing masks the entire evening. I would ask that if you are having a difficult time understanding us, if you can chat that in, if you're allowed to chat that, would be good to know if you need us to speak louder or to try to be a little bit more clear in our speaking. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we do at every meeting, I'm going to go ahead and read the mission statement. The vision of the Wakefield Public Schools is to graduate students who are confident, lifelong learners, who are respectful and caring members of their community. Our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and community by providing rich and challenging curriculum, high-quality instruction, and educational experiences that meet their individual needs and interests. I'm now going to open it up for public comment. Bob Burnett, I know you're here to speak to us.
Yep. Oh, I didn't know I was going first.
That's right. I think I may have told you were second, but you're now first.
Okay. I wanted to, we've got a few things at the high school ball field that I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to bring your attention to it. I'm going to be talking about it with the town, and because it's on school property, I wanted to give you the heads up so that I didn't know if you'd wind up being involved or not, but just wanted to get you in early. I thought I might be able to share my screen, but I don't know how to do that, I guess. So anyways, I'm just gonna have to talk. I'll be quick. First thing is a possible, it's kind of a safety issue. They have at the bullpens at the field, they have an L-shaped screen that's a backstop that's supposed to go behind the catcher, but they don't have enough room between the plate and the screen for a catcher to set up correctly. So it's kind of tight. It's kind of dangerous. It's not really appropriate for like a high school level pitcher to be pitching to someone that close. The other thing is the return on the L screen has a post that's actually in front of the plate, and it shouldn't. I mean, when I say it's in front of the plate, I mean it should be back behind the plate, like with the catcher. But it's in front, so a ball could ricochet off that post into the catcher, into whoever was catching. So that's it. And what I'm proposing to them is that they maybe just remove that fence and use a bow net for a backstop in the interim until they do something that's a little safer. The bullpen areas are uneven. They probably need to be kind of graded to bring them flat. Part of the issue, part of the problem with that, part of the reason it's that way is because the town will need to get maintenance trucks around the field to be able to prune the trees and stuff like that, so that the branches aren't hanging out into the field. So we have to do a little back and forth and figure out how we can get something that's safe for the pitchers to use, because that's something as well, that if the area in front of the pitching rubber isn't flat and level, sometimes players can develop knee and ankle injuries just from pitching. So anyhow, that's that. And let's see, a couple other things. There's a need for 120 volt exterior duplex receptacle, so that there's something that they can plug a sound system into for like special occasions like senior day and things like that. I think there's a conduit there, so I think they were maybe planning on doing it in the future, and so I'm just going to be see if we get that going. And it would also be nice to have a light mounted on top of the scoreboard directed at the flag, so that way the flag could be left up for the whole season and you wouldn't have to be taking it up and putting it down. And that's it for me. I thought I might be able to give you some graphic stuff and show you what I was talking about. But you were forced
Hey,
to
Bob?
listen. Yes.
Bob, could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Have you talked to Dennis Fazio about making some of those changes to the field?
Yep.
Oh, great. So he's on board. I'm sure he'll do a great job for you.
Yeah. He and I he's aware of them, and we are starting discussion. And I'm just in the public comment section here, letting you guys know, because it may be something that, you know, some of it or all of it or none of it may wind up coming back as an item that needs your approval.
Thanks.
Any other?
Yep, thank you.
Any other? Oh, actually, I can't entertain questions, but I just realized we did. Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
No worries, Mike. I forgot that we
didn't have that part.
Rewind. Thank you, Bob.
All right, thank you, Susie.
Yep. Any other public comment? Okay. All right, then we will move on with the agenda to our Student Advisory Council. I think we've got two folks here. One of you, Samantha, and I'm so sorry that I do not know your name in the bottom corner in the green.
That's okay. It's Sophia.
Sophia, what's your last name?
Callahan.
That's right. I'm sorry. I should know your name. I apologize.
Sure.
Which one of you guys wants to go first?
I can start us off.
Okay.
Regarding academics, MCAS has started this week for all sophomores and the juniors who decided to opt into taking it. They've completed the English sections on Monday and today. And then on Thursday and Friday, they will complete the math sections. And then MCAS for grade 10 remote students will begin next week and the week after. And Ms. Traficante has shared out the schedules with those parents. And then regarding athletics, all spring sports have started and are doing really great. And I'm on the lacrosse team, so I can attest to that and say that things are really going well and everyone's having a lot of fun. And then Sam can take it from here.
Yeah, so regarding kind of what's happening right now at the school, so the senior night committee is very excited to offer the Honor a Senior program again this year. You know, it went very well last year and the seniors were very happy with it. So they're doing it again for the senior class. So students who are seniors need to opt into the program, and they can do so at the Senior Night's website. And these students will be randomly matched with the person who signs up to sponsor a senior. So seniors need to opt in by this Friday, May 14th, and any, families who are interested in honoring a senior can sign up on the senior committee website. And once they've been matched, an email will be sent to them with all of the details. And the last day to do this is next Friday, the 21st. And I think that's all that we have for tonight.
Yep. Doug's got a question for you, or Mr. Lyons.
Sam and Sophia, can you tell us how the return with both cohorts full time on May 3rd, what that's like? How is that going?
I'd say that it's going pretty well. I've been adjusting to it well, and I think that going 3 days a week was a great transition into that. It was really nice to be able to go more than just twice and get used to going 5 days a week.
Yeah.
It's been every class more than just twice a week as well, because we've been getting to do more things and get a lot of work done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would second that. I think that it was a pretty, seamless transition. This week was a bit different with, the MCAS, but, that's kind of, what has to happen. It happens every year, so we're kind of used to it. But I think, everyone's excited to really be back full time, see friends that, they haven't seen all year, and, see teachers more often and, get more work done, especially in preparation for, AP exams, which are coming up.
We're really, really happy to have you back. And it looked like the first day everyone was excited to be there. And on the second day, everyone looked exhausted. Yeah, so welcome back. If you need anything, please let us know, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice
Thank
job.
you.
Any other questions for our student liaisons or advisory council? Okay. With that, Tom, the consent agenda?
Yes. Approval of the minutes. I move the school committee approve the minutes of the school committee meetings of March 23, 2021, April 13, 2021, and April 28, 2021. And the minutes of the school committee public budget hearing of March 18, 2021, and to accept the minutes of the school committee finance and facilities subcommittee meetings of March 11, 2021, April 1, 2021, and April 15, 2021, and the minutes of the school committee policy and communication subcommittee meetings of April 9, 2021, and April 23, 2021, as presented.
Second, that was a mouthful, Tom.
Motion made and seconded. Do we have any discussion? I know that was a lot of meeting minutes to review. Amy Wall.
I just have a question procedurally. Do we have to vote to have them as a consent agenda before we can vote on the consent agenda?
I'm sorry, can you ask that question again?
Sorry, yeah. So I'm just curious with the Roberts rules. Do we have to vote that we want to put those as a consent agenda first and then we vote on the actual consent agenda?
Are you saying that because of what they did at the town meeting the other day?
Well, just because of how I've seen other meetings take place, that's being one of them, yeah, that when we clump things together, I was under the impression that we just had to vote to clump them together and then to vote on it. I could be wrong, I don't know.
So, I mean, this is something that I've always seen on all of the school committee, so it sounds like Mr. Markham has some insight to provide.
Oh, good. Okay.
So that's a great question, Amy. So, a couple years ago, the school committee had reorganized its meeting in an attempt to be more efficient. And one of the things that was voted at that time and has carried forward until undone is the notion of having a consent agenda, and the minutes would be placed on the consent agenda as a single vote. Now, certainly, the committee has a chance to review its formatting each year, and any member has the ability to bring up the notion of undoing something that a former committee had done, or past committee had done. So this has just been carried forward since it was put in place a couple years ago for efficiency's sake. That being said, also, any member at this time during discussion could choose to pull out a set of minutes to discuss them separately. Like if someone had a concern of the March 23rd minutes, someone could request that those minutes come out of the consent agenda and set aside, and then vote on everything else, and then go back to those. So just because it's presented as a lump sum, if you will, or a single item, any member has a right to pull anything off and discuss at any time. It doesn't have to be considered that way. It doesn't have to be voted that way, just because it's presented that way for efficiency.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Tom. That makes sense.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Judy?
Ms. Bayer,
Yes.
Mr. Markham,
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau,
Yes?
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Piscadlo,
Yes.
Ms. Wall.
Yes.
Okay. We're gonna move on to budget items, and Christine, you've got some business reports.
I do.
Is that time?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Tonight before you, you have the monthly financial reports from July 1st, 2020 through April 30th, 2021. So this is the first 10 months of the fiscal year. As you'll see on the first page, it shows the local budget, the local appropriation from the town. We have an available balance of a little over $2 million, which is a little over 5% remaining. So we still have May and June to process payrolls, pay our bills, and encumber what we need for the rest of the year. The next page, it talks about also the available balances by school for the local budget. And then, which also brings us into the revolving and grant accounts. We're in good shape for spending down our grants. We have about 10% remaining for the remaining payrolls for the SPED grants. And the revolving accounts, again, I think I've said it at a couple of meetings, we're watching the preschool tuition payments in Wakefield Academy. I'll just stop does anyone have any questions? Mike? Mike?
Yeah, just a question, Christine, are you feeling pretty comfortable we'll be able to stay within the budget for the next 2 months?
Yes, we're gonna spend down, we're gonna have some budget transfers like we do every July. So the lines that you'll see negative, we're gonna do some transfers probably towards the end of July to make sure that we reconcile for the town.
Great, thank you.
The next part, we have the payroll warrants for the month of April. We had 3 payrolls because of the calendar in April. So I think we have a motion for the payrolls.
Yes, I move the school committee approve payroll warrants number 40, number 42, and number 44 as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. A motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Judy, roll call?
Ms. Bear,
Yes?
Mr. Markham,
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau,
Yes?
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Piscadlo,
Yes.
and Ms. Wall.
Yes.
Great. And the last item under budget is we have 3 gifts that we received this week for girls volleyball, basketball, and softball, all to pay stipends for assistant coaches. So if we have a motion to accept those gifts, that would be greatly appreciated.
We do. There are 3 gifts. I suggest we put forward 3 different motions. Move the school committee accept with gratitude the donation of $1,300 from the Wakefield High School girls volleyball, a stipend for the assistant coach for the 2021 winter season.
Second?
Discussion? Seeing none. Roll call vote. Judy?
Ms. Bear,
Yes?
Mr. Markham,
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau,
Yes?
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Piscadlo,
Yes.
and Ms. Wall.
Yes.
Secondly, I move the school committee accept with gratitude the donation of $1,000 from the Wakefield High School girls softball, a stipend for the assistant coach for the 2021 spring season.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none. Roll call?
Ms. Bear,
Yes?
Mr. Markham,
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau,
Yes?
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Piscadlo,
Yes.
Ms. Wall.
Yes.
Thirdly, I move the school committee accept with gratitude the donation of $1,000 from the Wakefield High School girls basketball, a stipend for the assistant coach for the 2021 winter season.
Anybody else want to do it?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion? Seeing none. Roll call?
Ms. Bear,
Yes?
Mr. Markham,
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau,
Yes?
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Piscadlo,
Yes.
Ms. Wall.
Yes.
Okay.
We're good.
Thanks, Christine.
Yep.
So moving on with the agenda, chair's comments and action items. So I did want to take a minute and kind of address the ongoing questions, not ongoing, but there's been some questions that have been directed at me and at the committee regarding the logo vote that took place on Election Day. And I wanted to take a minute to read a response that I sent to one of the people who was asking for clarity around what our intentions were as a school committee coming off of the town vote. I reiterated, and I want to reiterate just in general because I do think that there's questions out there. The school committee spent time back in March discussing the process that they wanted to follow as they worked towards making a decision about the logo. The committee voted initially knowing that a ballot vote was a possibility, but the majority of the committee felt we should proceed with the process we outlined. Then it was added to the ballot as a non-binding referendum. The committee discussed a second time what the process should be and voted to proceed with that process, which included holding community forums, sending surveys to collect data, and to hear from local Native Americans. The committee then followed that process and on March 23rd moved forward with a vote based on all of the information that had been gathered. At the subsequent meeting, the committee voted on a resolution outlining what will happen next, which includes the creation of a working group that will determine the next logo for the Wakefield schools. There is no plan to revisit the topic, actually, for the Wakefield High School. There is no plan to revisit the topic of the logo unless a committee member requests that it be added to the agenda. The role of the school committee is to serve. That is what the committee has done during the past few months. The committee listened to public comment during multiple meetings. They read more than 100 emails. They reviewed survey data collected from the community and students. Members did research on their own and had conversations with friends and strangers about the topic. The full committee voted on the process to follow and then to retire the logo after hearing from Native Americans. The mission of the school committee is to serve our community, but its primary role is to serve our students. The process the committee followed, gathering feedback from the community, students, and Native Americans, is in line with how the committee is expected to act and per the committee's understanding of the role they are to play. So I just wanted to clarify, because I think that's been an open question that's been coming up as to what happens next. So I'm hoping that clears up any of those questions. Next, I'd like to talk about subcommittee assignments. You guys all received an email from me over the weekend with those assignments, and I'm just going to read them out loud here so that the public can hear kind of where we landed. Mr. Markham is going to chair the Labor Committee, and Mr. Boudreau and Kevin are going to Piscadlo. Your name is so hard to pronounce, Piscadlo. I should talk. Piscadlo. Kevin Piscadlo is going to also be on that committee. So we've got Tom chairing it, Mike and Kevin, and the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for next Tuesday morning. I am going to be chairing the Finance and Facilities subcommittee, and Mr. Markham and Amy Wall will be joining me on that subcommittee, and our next meeting is tentatively next Thursday. The Student Services Subcommittee is going to be chaired by Mr. Boudreau. Ms. Wall and Ms. Lehman will be joining him on that committee. And that next meeting is tentatively scheduled for next Wednesday morning. And finally, the Policy and Communications Subcommittee is going to be chaired by Mr. Piscadlo, with Mr. Ingalls and Ms. Lehman joining him. And that next meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday afternoon. We also have a liaison role with the Human Rights Commission, and Mr. Ingalls has agreed to be that liaison. And we also have a liaison with the Environmental Sustainability Committee. We are still looking for someone to take that spot. If no one is interested, I will continue to serve as that liaison, as I have for the last year or so. And then we also have a spot on the high school working group that we have two school committee members who will sit on that working group. And so if anyone is interested in that position, I've had a couple of people express some interest, but I just want to make sure that everybody saw that because it was at the end of my very long email and I wasn't sure if everybody saw it. So we will be talking about the high school project in depth at our next meeting, so we can report back on kind of who's going to be the second person on that working group. Mr. Markham is currently on that and has been on it since it was put into place. Any questions on subcommittee assignments? Mr. Boudreau?
Susie, one other thing that I'm on is the Wakefield Vision, so I guess I'm the school committee representative on that. If any of the other school committee members are potentially interested in that, I'll certainly continue to do that, but if you're interested, we can certainly discuss that as well if you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you. I had forgotten that we had a liaison to that, so thanks, Mike. Okay. Oh, we got questions.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm on that with Mike as well, but I'm a liaison for a different board. So just so you know, there's two of us there.
I wonder if you could do double duty.
Right, I know. Possibly.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. Mr. Markham, did you have a question?
I just wanted to, if I could just maybe fill in some thoughts around the high school group.
Sure.
People may inquire about that. I know that it's becoming a more and more part of the public discourse these days. So just so we had established the school committee last summer, meaning the summer of 2020, had established a high school a building committee. It's actually called. It's required by the MSBA guidelines. There was a volume of documents that the school department and the town needed to submit to the state at the time, and the membership of a high school building committee with its various representatives of different stakeholder groups around town needed to be submitted to the state during the fall. So we had gone through an exercise at the time to create and invite different stakeholder groups to either appoint or elect a representative. Then the school committee ultimately voted to appoint, I think we have 17 members in total that are members of the high school building committee. At the time, Mr. Callanan and myself were voted in as school committee representatives, which therein lies the reason for the vacancy. Mr. Callanan has obviously left the school committee. So there was a vacancy. That's why there was a vacancy at the time. This group will begin certainly working in earnest in the fall now that, soon, in the summer and into the fall, now that the next couple of steps have passed muster with both the state set of approvals as well as what's going to be going on. Most recently, we know the Permanent Building Committee appointing a project engineer, a project representative, and soon to be having in place, engineers and architects. So there was sort of a big hurry up and wait, right? We needed to rush around, so to speak, and we had a couple months last summer to pull this committee together for the submission of documents. The committee is now in place, but hasn't been activated until the near future. So that's why there's a vacancy, in case folks are wondering why there's a vacancy and what the committee actually role is.
And the permanent building committee will be the person that, is it Joe from that committee that will run that working group?
No, the working group will self-select co-chairpersons.
Oh, okay.
This working group is really the school department's opportunity to provide sort of educational guidance. That there'll be a lot of people at the table, right? So there'll be engineers and architects, and there'll be bricks and mortar, men and women. So this group of individuals representing various constituencies of the school district. There are parents, there are representatives from WEF, there are teacher representatives, obviously high school principal, the two assistant principals. I don't recall everyone off the top of my head. Yeah. It's a group of about 17 people, but specifically that group represents the school district at the planning table.
Okay.
So as the type of things that architects and engineers necessarily wouldn't have, really, the educational requirements and demands of the school district and what it wants for a new high school. So there's not a vacuum in the educational expertise around the table. Obviously, Mr. Lyons, Ms. Monroe are on the committee as well.
Any questions from committee members? Okay. Next on the agenda, I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about our Human Rights Commission appointments. At a recent town council meeting 2 weeks ago, the town council made a decision to change the way that they were making their Human Rights Commission appointments. In the past, the town council and the school committee shared responsibility for appointing members. We each had some that we were responsible for appointing. I'm trying to think when it was when we did our joint appointments, maybe in the fall. So when we were appointing school committee stand-ins, we at that same meeting also appointed jointly some Human Rights Commission appointees. So we did do it jointly that time. The time before, we had each had our own appointments. But the town council made a decision to kind of take back the responsibility for the appointment of all of the Human Rights Commission's roles. If I'm being completely honest, I was a little disappointed in the way that the process played itself out, but this is where we're at now. And we're at a point where we have the opportunity, I think, to include in their document that outlines how this is going to work going forward, to say that we're okay with having them do the full set of appointments, as long as our liaison has a seat at the table, is highly involved in the review of the applicants, has the opportunity to bring it back here to our committee for our point of view, and that we, as a school committee, play a role, that we have a seat at the table, even though it looks different. If anyone was involved in if anyone has heard over the years kind of how the HRC came to be, the vision always was that the school committee would have a key role in the running and the running of that committee, to be honest, because so much of it is focused on educating the community about human rights issues. And so we believe that we still belong at that table. I think my recommendation is that we move forward with the new way that the town council would like to do those appointments, but that we make sure that in writing, in the documentation, that we have very clear language that states that we will have we will play a critical role and we will have a seat at the table. I have spoken with Julie Smith-Galvin about this. There is documentation that has been put in front of the committee, but that has not been voted on and finalized. And so the plan is to work with Julie prior to their next meeting, which is 2 weeks from yesterday, to get some language in there that will reflect kind of what our involvement will be going forward. And so I just want to make sure that people are aware of kind of what happened, the recommendation that I'm making, that we kind of proceed with the plan, but get some language in there that makes our involvement stronger. And I really wanted to give people the opportunity to ask questions or raise concerns if you don't believe that this is the way that we should go. So I'll stop there. Anybody have any questions? Kevin.
Just one question, Madam Chair, and I don't mean you don't need to speak for them, but because this preceded my election to this body, I had heard about it kind of through the grapevine, but wasn't privy to the details. Can you share, if you can even, what kind of the impetus was for this decision to change the way it had been previously?
So the little bit that I know about it was that it had to do with the perception that it is difficult to get all of us together to do joint appointments, and that was complicated. And there's also another complicating matter, which is that there's kind of two sets of rules that, or bylaws is a really formal word, so I don't want to use that word. But there were two sets of guidance documents that were being referred to. One that said we had separate appointments, and one that said that we had joint appointments, that we should be doing it jointly versus separately. And so I think that's also been a problem, which is why the town council came forward with like, hey, this is our new set of operating procedures. At least when I watched the town council meeting, Chairperson Santos referred to the difficulty in kind of jointly trying to get our committees together to make the decision. So that's what I believe was the impetus for the change.
Thank you.
Yep. Stephen?
Thank you, Susie. So yeah, I would just say, so recognizing that there was some challenges in the, getting everyone together and being able to do joint appointments, that didn't seem like possibly an ideal. And then knowing some folks that had approached wanting to be on that commission and not knowing who to apply to, whether they applied to the school committee or to the town or both. I can appreciate that was challenging. And so I just found myself sort of having some surface knowledge of the situation. I could not think of at the time a better process. So I kind of agree with you in that, I see some value in the way that they would like to approach it. We are the only, I think, body outside of town council that was doing appointments. So I can appreciate their perspective on wanting to bring that sort of back in-house. But at the same time, recognizing the roots of the HRC and where the school committee does play a role in that education, in that, in our ethos, in the lifelong learner position, we have some stake in that. So just emphasizing, rebuilding sort of our place alongside the HRC and at the table. As long as that happens, I think that we can feel pretty safe in the process.
And Stephen, thank you. One of the things that when I was talking with Counselor Smith Galvin was the critical piece of the schools being involved, because she certainly recognizes the need to have the schools promoting the events that the HRC is doing, promoting the fact when the applications are available, or then when they're looking for applicants, because our school families are such a key part of the community, and so she's very committed to making sure that partnership continues, and it, like I said, our seat at the table just looks different, and the town council certainly is set up and has a process for running all of their appointments. Right, they do that yearly. They have a whole process. They've got the application, and this was the only commission that we were doing that for. And so, I think they have a straightforward process that works really well for them. And I think our process was a little bit, maybe slightly bumpier. Could we have improved it given the opportunity? We absolutely could have been. We could have, right? And I think, many of us would have liked to have been given the opportunity to try and fix it instead of it happening quite this way, but it's where we are. And I do think where we landed, it is a good place as long as we can get that language in there so there's a common understanding of what the school committee's involvement will be. And I feel good about my conversations with Chairperson Smith Galvin on that front. Mike.
Yeah, I think part of the confusion was as Susie had said, call them bylaws, call them whatever you want, but it seemed like neither version had ever been officially voted on. So that was certainly part of the confusion of the meeting, as I recollect. And another complication of the last one is we had sort of a mass exodus of members on the Human Rights Commission. So there were a lot of people that had to be appointed all at once. I don't know if the intent is that's done on an annual basis, but yeah, I'm certainly fine as long as our input is incorporated into the selection process. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. The last item on my side was operating norms, responding to emails and social media. So you guys have already kind of seen this in action. When I put this on the agenda, I hadn't had any emails to respond to yet, but I have had some since then, and in the past, there have been different procedures that different chairpeople have followed when it came to responding to emails, and I have felt like it was really important that I be able to copy my fellow committee members so that they know, one, I responded, and two, what I said. And I did reach out to our Massachusetts Association of School Committees member, our liaison, Dorothy Presser, and she to say, am I allowed to kind of copy everybody, and what language do I need to include in the email to make sure that it's very clear that I'm not violating open meeting laws? And so I just wanted to share that at the time when I put this on the agenda, that you would start to see emails from, that would be copying you on it, and that to be sure that you don't respond to all on those emails, because that would start to potentially put us in a hairy position from an OML perspective. So that was the comment I wanted to make about emails. And then on social media, I would say I would be, if you are going to weigh in on social media, if you see something on the community board or Wakefield Moms, I know the calendar has come up a couple of times over the last few days, just be really clear when things have been voted on versus not. That if they're up for discussion, and just really be careful about how you clearly state kind of the status of the item that you are speaking about, and staying as factual as possible. I think we will be having more conversation about this. You can obviously say whatever you would like to say, but we want to be as clear as possible when we are speaking on social media. And as the Policy and Communication Subcommittee starts to get going, my hope is that we will start to get a little bit more guidance from that subcommittee about how we want to manage and be more communicative on social media, because it's not something that we've been good at. It is complicated, and so I just would ask that you think when you're posting, and that we will spend more time kind of thinking about that and talking about it in the future as part of the subcommittee's work. Any questions? Amy Lehman.
Hi, thank you for explaining that. I do have a question. I actually was on the other end. I've emailed the school committee numerous times. So I just wanted to ask if you would respond to everyone that emails, or will there be times that you won't respond? Because like I said, being on the other side, I would get a few responses and not ever from the chair. So I just want to make sure like everyone gets the same opportunity, like you'll respond to all the ones that come in. I guess
that is the plan. I know I'm like 4 or 5 behind today. I'm also not going to be someone most of the time who says, thanks for your thoughts, or thanks for your input, which makes it harder because I want to be thoughtful in my response. And sometimes these emails require a little bit more thought. I have one waiting that I feel like I need to include something that the person asked for. And so that's why I haven't responded to that one. And it was just a busy day. But yes, my intention, Amy, is to answer every email. And that's one of the reasons why I want you to be copied on it, is so that you know that I'm answering every email. And if there's one that you think I missed, please respond and send me a note like, hey, did you miss this one? Give me 24 hours though, if you can. But that is my intention.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Amy Wall.
And if we feel so inclined, it's okay for us to respond back as well, correct?
It is. So actually, I'm glad you asked that question, because Kevin and I had a little bit of back and forth on this. So for emails that come directly to you, you of course should respond, right? That's absolutely your role. I think for the ones where the rules that we've always followed was the chairperson speaks on behalf of the committee. And in order to not confuse the issue on that, I traditionally let the chairperson speak on behalf of me. There were occasions when a letter would come from somebody that I knew, and I felt really strongly that I wanted to reach out and say, hey, I heard you. And so we can't stop other members from doing that, right? There will be those times where at least if the topic is something that really is meaningful to you, or it's somebody that you know, like, of course you're going to respond. Because, and that's why I think it's important in my email that I always say, I'm speaking on behalf of the committee. You shouldn't expect to hear from everybody else, because I do think that there is a feeling out in the public when they send an email to the school committee that everybody's going to respond. And that isn't kind of that's not the way that it works. It's not the way that we've decided to work. But yes, Amy, you should feel comfortable responding to an email that is sent to me, to all of us, if you feel like that's something that you want to respond to.
Okay. And then just a clarification too, when you respond on behalf of all of us, is it known that it's not necessarily all of our thoughts? I know it's responding as one person for the whole group, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're all in agreement with what the thoughts are.
So, right. So I think what's hard about that is I'm representing what the committee has decided in the past, right? But if we're talking about kind of future issues, you're right. I can't represent what the committee feels about something that would be happening in the future, because that would be deliberation. And you will find that I probably will not comment about my personal feelings on something that we have not deliberated as a group, because you're not supposed to do that. Mm-hmm. And so in those cases, I might write something like, thank you for your thoughts, right? Because we won't have talked about the issue. With the emails that have been coming in this week about the logo, we have kind of a stance on it. And it is my job as chair to represent the decisions that have been made by the committee in the past. Tom, do you feel like I'm representing this okay?
Yeah, I was going to offer to chime in the material that was included in the packet. I think item number 6 sort of speaks to this. This is always it's a great question, Amy, because it's a real point of conversation that the committee has each year at its retreat. If you see these set of protocols was adopted last year for how how the committee at the time wanted to sort of interact with each other and so forth. I think what Susie's trying to set up in a retreat for us is to have a similar conversation. What sort of protocols do we want to adopt, and how we want to interact? But one of the things I think is important, and it gets a little complicated sometimes, because very often when a citizen sends the 7 of us an email, he or she is often asking or advocating a position on a future vote. Whether it's a budget item, it's a curriculum item, it's a policy position, whatever, right? I think the school committee should do the following things, right? In an instance like that is, I think what Sue's referring to, and item number 6 certainly helps with, is it would be inappropriate in terms of it becomes a deliberation, or potentially could be a deliberation if each of us responded to that person with our point of view. Now we're having a deliberation that's outside of the public, outside of the camera, outside of this conversation. And that's where it gets a little sticky. That's where the MASC, the School Committee Association, is going to say we need to be really, really careful about how do you deliberate via email with the potential of putting your position out there outside of a public meeting, which is a violation of the open meeting law. So that's why item number 6 is here, that the school committee chair speaks on our behalf to represent positions the school committee has already taken. If someone puts out an email expressing either satisfaction or maybe dissatisfaction with the position the committee took, then the chair would say, however you want to start, thank you for your outreach, et cetera, et cetera. Please be aware the committee voted the following, whatever. So it gets really tricky. I mean, sometimes people aren't interested or aren't as interested in a deliberation. They just want to make their voice heard, which is perfectly then fair to say, hey, thank you for your outreach. We'll take this under advisement, or something polite to appropriately recognize the input. So it really is a thoughtful conversation that I think will be nicely had at our retreat, sort of how we want to handle something complicated like that. And when our facilitator from MASC joins us and helps facilitate that part of the meeting, she'll be able to sort of guide us down what is an open deliberation. Because if the 7 of us respond on each expressing our position on a particular matter, we've now collectively deliberated in outside of the public arena, and that's problematic. So really, the email, we've sort of within these protocols over the years have adopted email as almost as a one-way means of communication. People can let us aware of their point of view, and then the chair will thoughtfully and respectfully acknowledge that. But certainly it's open for a conversation too on how we want to think about it. Does that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the
Square that off.
distinction of is it a something that's already been deliberated or not is an incredibly important distinction here, because if it has not been deliberated, we shouldn't be talking about our opinion on it at all until until the deliberation happens. I believe that it's important to keep that kind of private. And so if we were talking about something that were going to happen in the future, I will very likely respond with a thanks for your input type of response. Any other remaining questions?
Yeah.
Oh, Mike?
Rosie? Yeah, I think your letter it obviously restated the facts in this one particular that I think you're citing, which is totally appropriate in that regard. But then almost all the letters aren't really asking for us to remind them what occurred in the past, is what they think should happen in the future. So I think your comment about that this is the situation, unless X happens, there is no plans for Y kind of a thing, and you just leave it at that. So I think it was probably a good example of how you determine that demarcation line.
Yep. Okay. I think we are ready to hand this over to you, Superintendent Lyons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to try to talk a little bit louder. If you can't hear me, please let me know because of the mask. So comments and updates. So I have 6 items tonight. In regard to comments and updates, our good news to report to the community, our FY22 school budget was approved on Saturday. That represents a 4.1% increase over last year's budget. We have also worked collaboratively with FinCom and Town Council and the town leadership. And we are also going to be getting additional funds for COVID-related positions to open in the fall, right? So the total amount of money is $360,000 added to our 4.1% increase, which equals a 4.88% increase overall. We're really pleased. We think it's a good budget to start the school year. With budgeting, it's always difficult because it's a series of value judgments, what's in, what's out. But we think that this is a really good budget for us to start the school year. So we're pleased about that. COVID data, just very quickly, where we are with COVID in our schools. Last week we did not have our standing Friday WCAT call. Last week we had 6 new cases total, and this week to date we have 2 new cases. So we're trending at about half the numbers we were just a few weeks ago. So that's really positive, and the numbers in the state and Wakefield look to be trending in the downward direction as well. Currently, we have 21 students in quarantine, and 17 of those 21 students are in quarantine because they're symptomatic and their parents have decided to keep them out of school. I make this distinction because we keep track of the reason why students are in quarantine, and this number that people are symptomatic and staying out of school is a very positive thing. And in the past, we had high numbers that were in quarantine because they were directed by our local Board of Health. And the fact that those numbers are almost zero at this point is really terrific, right? Because those, when students were in quarantine because they were directed by the Board of Health, they were there because they were a close contact. And so that's really good information as well. On May 3rd, after our last meeting, the following Monday, we welcomed back all of our high school students. So at this point, we have all students in session at elementary, middle, and high. So that's really great news. Our teachers have been so exceptional, and their work and their efforts are not missed on anyone in the community, and we want to thank them, as well as thank parents for their ongoing support. I will let you know, we have heard loud and clear questions about transportation, specifically about the increased number of cars at the high school in Woodville and also at Galvin. We are working with our traffic supervisors and with the police to come up with some solutions on that. There'll be more to follow in our next meeting. In regard to the high school, good news there, we met our milestone for Module 2, and we're moving on to Module 3 as part of the process. There are 8 modules total, so completing Module 2 is a milestone. Moving to Module 3 is really, it's a process that we're pleased about. On May 4th, just to build on Tom's comments about MSBA and where we are, on May 4th, the town and the schools received a letter on the appointment of Left Field as our project management group, which is great because we know Left Field. They were the project management group that managed the addition and renovation at Walton Elementary. They're also managing the changes to our safety building. So they're kind of a known entity to us, and they will be leading us into Module 3 and Module 4. Module 3 is really about feasibility, so, and that includes all of the things that Tom mentioned. So thank you for bringing that up, Tom. I think you saved me about 10 minutes of explanation there, so I appreciate it. And so we have been working hard to stand up summer services, and as well as planning the administrative retreat and summer work that we will be doing over the summer. I also learned today that we have an opportunity, and we have agreed that we think that this is a good thing. The plan's a really short turnaround, so there'll be more information coming out to both you, school committee, and to the larger Wakefield community. We will be able to offer vaccinations to students ages 12 and over. The plan is to offer them at the field house next week. We are working with Ruth Clay to create a schedule, and these are not mandatory. This is by choice. They need parental consent, and so there'll be more information forthcoming on that. So I don't know if anyone has any questions before I transition to the next topic. Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Great news about the vaccinations. I hope those that are comfortable doing so will take you all up on it. So I think that'll really help as we continue to emerge from this pandemic. A question you had referenced, school students being back, or the majority of students being back. Do you, off the top of your head, happen to know how many students have chosen to remain remote for the rest of the year?
So our number, I believe our number at this point is 290. And so, but don't quote me on that. Let me get back to you on that with a firm number. We were hovering around 400, but I believe we've invited about 100 students back. So that's where we are at this point in time.
So about 290 are remaining remote or choosing to remain remote.
Yes. And so that's, let me check on that and I will get back to you, but I believe that was the number.
That just gives an idea. I don't need to know the exact numbers. So you don't have to do that. The reason why I ask is I know it's something that we've been talking about in my work is that, we certainly have students who are going to be, let's say, spent the last year remote, and even though are coming here as sophomores, are really almost coming in as brand new students. So I don't know how the 290 fall, but talking with some families, we may have a student who would have physically entered the middle school or physically entered the high school this year, but didn't because they were remote, of course, in the fall semester. Are there any plans for, we're calling it a reorientation, are there any plans to do anything similar for those students who maybe prior to the fall may benefit from a program like that? I don't know if anything was in the works, or if not, is that something that
So you were cutting in and out, Kevin, but I'll do my best to answer the question. So is there any plans to reacclimate students that have been remote before the start of the school year? The answer is yes, right? We're going to be working on that at the close of school, June 18th, right? So that's kind of the next phase for us. That's the next kind of target for us. But we will be inviting students in. The majority of the students in the number that I just gave you are elementary students, right? So we're thinking of we're thinking of elementary, middle, high, but we're also trying to be very intentional and thoughtful around students that are ending at one level and transitioning to a new level, right? So because, how do we provide closure for those students? How do we invite them into end of year activities is really a focus of where we are right now. And then how we're thinking ahead of, so what will transition be like for those students? But not only those students, we have students, I spoke about this on Saturday when I spoke briefly about the budget. We have students that are in homeschool plans. We have students that have chose to go to private school this year. So we're going to be inviting students back from a number of different settings that we really need to be thoughtful about. And the plan to start school will be to really look closely at the schedules. We're not just going to be jumping into academics pre-COVID style like when they left. We're really going to be thoughtful about how we're helping students acclimate and how we're keeping tabs on students in regard to their progress. There'll be more information coming on this both in June and July.
Excellent, thank you.
I appreciate the question. Stephen?
Thank you. Doug, just in reference to sort of the vaccinations for sort of some of the, the teens in our district, I can't imagine that we're going to be keeping track of who is vaccinated. I'm thinking that that'd be a HIPAA, violation. But how does that sort of feed into what we're doing with quarantines and contact tracing? And is there any sort of policy changes that we need to make, or is it just going to stay status quo? It's good that the kids are vaccinated, but we're still going to follow the same protocols that exist today. Is there going to be a change, or what are your thoughts there?
So the guidance has already changed in regard to what and how we quarantine, right? So the distance has been changed from 6 feet to 3 feet, right? And so it's also changed and has been clear around if adults have been vaccinated, they do not need to quarantine, right? And so I'm anticipating that as more and more students get vaccinated, that they too will not have to quarantine. The question is, will that guidance be updated before June 18th? I don't know. But it's a great question.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, Doug, just so I understand, and I apologize if you already mentioned this, who are we utilizing to conduct the vaccination dispensing?
It's being set up through the Board of Health. So Ruth, I'm sure, will be using a vendor and volunteers and members of the Board of Health. We're doing it in Wakefield, and she's also organizing this in Melrose as well.
And then these kids will get vaccination cards from whoever we utilize.
Just like us.
Just like we do.
Just like us.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Amy?
A couple of questions on that. So if they're setting up this vaccination site.
Yeah.
So will they hold the second one as well, or will those kids now be on their own to get their second one?
No. It's first and second.
Okay. Any idea of how many vaccines that they'll be distributing or have access to?
So I'm told that they will have they will have enough vaccine to meet the demand.
Okay,
That's what I'm told.
Yeah.
I shared with Ruth Clay today a list of all students 12 and over.
okay,
So she will
And
take
then-
that number and bring that back to the vendor and say these are the number of shots that we're looking for.
okay, and then there'll be a sign up or something, I assume?
There'll be information coming out before the end of the week.
Okay, and as far as school year for next year, I know that they had made last year the flu vaccine mandatory and then changed their mind on it.
Yep.
Would that come from the state or from the district if they were gonna make this mandatory?
So I believe that would come from the state, and I think like the flu shot, I think that they might bump up against, people's right not to have it. So I think and that's why they try to walk that back, Amy.
Okay.
Right? And so, but I think if there's any kind of quote unquote mandatory vaccination or anything or shot, then that would come from Mass DPH.
Thank you.
You're certainly welcome. Other questions? Amy?
Hi, sorry, this isn't about the vaccine. You had mentioned summer school,
Yeah.
ended school year, and last year it was held at the Woodville because of the work being done at the Galvin. And I got an email that it's back at the Galvin.
Yes.
But then I have an insider report that there's a sinking classroom and there's gonna be work done at the Galvin this summer, so I wasn't sure if that was true or just a rumor.
Did you say you cut out a little bit? Did you say you have an inside report?
I have an insider report. that
Yeah,
there's a
I would
sinking
like,
classroom.
I haven't heard that yet, but that's really interesting. As far as I know, we're gonna be at Galvin.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure that if there was more work to be done at the Galvin.
All of the work that has been done at the Galvin is completed and signed off on.
All right.
But I'll have to call you later to hear what our engineering dilemma is. I appreciate that.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I actually have a question related to the summer services. Is
Yeah.
that, could we expect a presentation on summer services before the end, in our next two meetings, do we think?
We can do anything that you'd like us to do. Yeah, so yes, we
I'd
can.
just like to jump in on timing.
Right on timing.
No, I'm just thinking of, in terms of the work that we're doing, the curriculum coordinators and myself are doing with Estelle around the general academy academic program. Just in terms of how we're gonna structure groups, we're looking to utilize some of the spring data we get. So maybe like end of May is kind of our target for when we might have more information around, what we wanna, students we'd like to invite in and what we'd like to offer to families. But I know that the special ed extended school year planning has been going on, for a while now, and I think they're getting close to done on that one. So there's a couple different parts for summer.
Yep.
So yeah.
We
maybe
could
the-
probably wait till the first June meeting to do that, just so that you've got your pieces of the puzzle done.
That feels more realistic, just to have all of the information.
Okay. Nope, that
Thank
sounds
you.
reasonable. That was it for me on questions. Anybody else have questions for Doug?
All right, thank you so much. Next up, it is my pleasure to introduce, and the plan was to bring her in a couple of meetings ago, but it's my pleasure to introduce Rosie Galvin, our new Director of Special Education. And we're really, really pleased and fortunate to have been able to hire someone so competent. So we really appreciate you being here, Rosie. I don't know if you'd like to do an introduction. I've introduced you so many times now, I feel like I have your resume down, haven't memorized, but I'll leave it to you. Go ahead.
Sure, yeah. Thank you everyone for having me. I appreciate you having me here tonight. So yeah, I can talk a little bit about myself and my experience. Personally, I was born and raised in Boston and still live here. I currently lead the special education department at the Community Charter School of Cambridge, which is a 6th through 12th grade Title I charter school. So I have over 8 years of experience there, starting off as a middle school special education teacher in the 6th and 7th grade. And after serving 4 years as a special ed teacher, I was asked to join the leadership team. So first serving as the department chair for the special education department, and then moving into the director role, where I've been leading the special ed department and have now been part of the administration team, oversee counseling and other related service providers. So for me, I mean, I really love this role because I've been able to connect with lots of different students and families and really think about special ed systems at our school, all kind of in the vein of increasing student performance. So I have a lot of experience working as a team to kind of increase or make our processes more efficient within the special education world. So I've been able to kind of hone my skills through this by creating partnerships with other directors of special education in the state. And also I participated in the new Directors of Special Education Leadership Institute that was put on by DESE as well. So I'm really excited to be here. I've actually started, I don't know if Doug has mentioned that I've started working my second day today. So I'm doing Tuesdays and Fridays in Wakefield through the end of June. And then starting July 1st, I'll be here full time. So I've already gotten the chance to start meeting some folks, a lot of the coordinators, the assistant principals, and doing tours of the school. And I've really enjoyed my time so far. Everyone's been really, really great, and I'm taking in lots of information and learning a lot about the district. So I'm really happy to be here, and happy to answer any questions if anyone has any for me.
Any questions, team?
Welcome, Rosie.
Thanks so much.
Amy Lehman.
Yep, Amy?
So the student services group, do they work directly with the special education director?
Oh, she means
Usually, our meetings usually involve Doug, Kara, and Lynn previously. So I'd say, Doug, not to answer the question for you, but I believe the answer is yes.
He's correct. You got it.
So at what point could Rosie join us?
Next Wednesday, we would have our first meeting.
Okay.
Unless Rosie's here, I don't know if you missed that, she's here Tuesday and Friday, excuse me.
Rosie, I think
actually
yeah,
works out perfect because next Friday I'm
has to
away
be
for a
Wednesday,
friend's
so.
wedding, so I moved my on-campus day to Tuesday and Wednesday next week, so that could work.
Good? Yeah,
All right.
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you so much. With your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to just take the agenda items out of order to let the students go next.
I was going to suggest that.
So we can hear, the Youth Council worked with our counselors to create a survey to gauge kind of the mental health and the behavioral health of students in school. They're presented to town council, they're presented to faculty and staff, and they're here this evening to talk to us about. And I think Amy Wall, you asked about this in our last meeting, which is, I think, one of the prompts that brought them here. I had the good fortune to meet with Alyssa Toppy, where she coached me up very thoughtfully on the work that they're doing. And this group, these young adults are amazing. The group of them, individually, I think any one of them could run a small country. Together, they are a force, right? And so they are really an impressive group. And so, Alyssa, thank you for the time that you spent with me going through this data. I appreciate it, and I'd like to turn it over to you and the group.
So I'm going to start. So hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lauren Blois. I'm a junior at Wakefield High School. I'm the vice chair of the Wakefield Youth Council, and I'm the chair of our mental health working group. So if everybody wants to introduce themselves for the members of the working group, maybe just go in order that we have on the slide. So Jack, if you want to go first.
Thanks, Lauren. My name is Jack. I am the chair of the Wakefield Youth Council. I am a member of the mental health working group, and I am a graduating senior at St. John's Prep, and I'm going to American University next year. So Ali, next.
Hello, my name is Ali Atwi. I am a non-voting member of the Youth Council. I'm in the 8th grade and also a member of the Communications and Outreach Subcommittee and the Mental Health Working Group.
Hi, I'm Yana Herzog. I'm also a member of the Youth Council. I'm a junior at the Wakefield High School, and I am also the Youth Council liaison to the Human Rights Commission.
Hi, my name is Alyssa Toppy. I'm a voting member of the Youth Council and the chair of our Communications Outreach Subcommittee, as well as a member of the Mental Health Working Group. I'm a senior at Wakefield High School, and I'm also going to American University.
Hi, my name is Nick Polari. I'm a junior at Wakefield High School. I'm a voting member of the Wakefield Youth Council. I am also a liaison to the Wakefield Police Department and a member of the Mental Health Working Group.
Awesome, thank you all. So we can get started with our presentation, and as that's kind of going, I'll give a quick overview. So this was originally brought to us, this idea was brought to us by Anthony Amatucci. He's the secretary of the Youth Council. And we all just kind of unanimously agreed that this was an initiative that we wanted to take a step forward in, as the pandemic has just brought a lot of increased isolation to ourselves and our peers and just everybody around us. So Jack, if you want to start with our mission and our goals, and then we can kind of go through with the results.
Yes, awesome. Thanks, Lauren. So basically, when we set out to this survey, we had a few goals in mind. So first, we wanted to better understand the mental health of our peers, provide support through the Galvin student support system and the Wakefield High School counselors, break the stigma surrounding mental health and getting resources from others, and provide mental health resources to students and adults in the community.
Hey, Jack.
Yeah.
So we're running the slide deck here in studio. So if you need a slide to change, just let us know and we can make that change.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you can go to the next slide, I think Ollie's gonna take the next one.
Thank you.
So for actions taken for this, we formed the mental health working group, which we're all here, and we met with the Wakefield High School Guidance Department and the GMS student support staff. So we created a survey for the Wakefield High School, which was sent out on the 4th of February this year. And we also provided mental health resources to the public on our social media platforms, Instagram and Facebook. And we presented our findings to representatives from Mass Support at our all council meeting, and also in separate meetings to the high school guidance department, the GMS student support staff, and the Wakefield High School faculty.
So we'll now be talking about the survey results and just kind of an overview of our process. We worked with the Galvin Middle School student support staff to create a survey. They administered it to students, and then we'll be discussing the results. So you can go to the next slide.
Sorry. Did I go too fast? Do you want this slide? Okay.
So this segment, the Galvin Middle School segment of this slideshow, was created by the survey itself was created by the student support staff, and all responses to the survey were anonymous, and students were able to leave their name at the end of the survey if they wanted to support from an adult.
76 or 478 students reported enjoying their classes more than or equal to previous school years. This could be attributed to smaller class sizes, less time physically in school, new learning skills, and stronger connections with teachers. 79% or 497 students reported feeling connected to their teachers more than or equal to previous school years. This could be because there's a larger level of understanding of what we are going through, and there's a unified feeling of being in the same storm but different boat. 84% or 510 students reported feeling happy with their grades and more than or equal to previous school years. 83% or 522 students reported remote learning has stayed the same or gotten easier for them in terms of difficulty. 81% or 510 students reported feeling motivated to do well in school more than or equal to previous school years. These answers could have been because current learning model works best for them. There is stronger teacher connections and there is more time for extra help.
So this next slide, you can see that a decent amount of students, anywhere from 22 to 34% of students, worried about their health and their family and friends in previous school years, referring to before the pandemic. And that's totally understandable and something that a lot of us have definitely experienced throughout the past year. And something that could be done to maybe improve this a little bit, we could continue to ensure that all students and staff are following safety protocols and provide ideas of ways to set boundaries or talk about people's comfort levels revolving the pandemic. And the next 4 statistics, I'm not going to read them all because there's a lot of them, but they're very similar to the data we just shared in revolving around stress and being isolated and losing social connections. It's concerning to see that there are students that are experiencing that, but it's also understandable given the context of the pandemic. And to help these students, we could have even stronger support from staff, maybe reaching out about things other than school or academics, and providing ways to stay connected with friends and remote students, because there's a really wide variety of situations that people are finding themselves in. Getting settled in like earlier in the night for students to go to bed earlier, and asking students what can be done to help with their mental health are also things that can be done. They sound really simple, but these things can go a long way if they're combined.
So on this next slide, the students were asked how many hours on average they spend on screens, and the numbers were high in the middle of the time range, which is kind of expected with how much technology is used for school nowadays. But however, we all know that excessive screen time can negatively affect one's health. So this is something that you can pay attention to in this data set.
So finally, we asked a really important kind of overarching question. Do you think you're managing your stress during the pandemic in a healthy way? So the slim majority of students answered yes, which is absolutely amazing. Obviously, that's really what we want. We want healthy coping mechanisms and healthy coping skills. However, for this number to go up, we can really just improve teacher connections and continue to make them stronger. And then we can also provide resources with more healthy coping skills so people have access to them. So this is the last slide for the Galvin. So before we move on to the high school, I really want to credit the Galvin administration, the student support staff, and the teachers there. I think they're doing a really great job with implementing some guidance with social emotional learning, but also letting there be a little bit of flexibility with how they're implementing it. So they're starting in a really great place, but there is always a room for improvement. So we're very lucky to have those teachers. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jack to start off with the high school results.
Thanks, Lauren. So these high school results are not as great as we would hope they would be, but we're really thankful for the guidance department helping us. So can you go to the next slide, please? So our overview, basically, this survey is created by our communications subcommittee, and it was administered to remote and in-person students on February 4th with the help of the guidance department and administration. We gathered over 600 responses from students ranging from freshman to senior, which is about 60% of the school population. To protect our peers' privacy, all questions were anonymous and optional. However, the guidance department allowed for students to fill out a separate survey if they felt they needed support. So Ali, you can get the next slide.
Is that the right slide? Okay.
Yes. So this slide displays the survey population for the Wakefield High School. So overall, we had a fairly even split of responses per grade level. So it gives us good insight to all perspectives of students. We got the most responses from the junior class and the least responses from the sophomore class, as displayed on the screen.
On the next slide, we asked the question, how are you feeling right now? As this was administrated at the very start of the day, we wanted to see how our peers were starting from, and if those feelings changed after taking the survey. Students were able to choose more than one answer, and the majority of respondents said that they were tired and stressed.
So one of our first sections on the survey had to do with the questions about the pandemic and how that affected stress and anxiety. We go to the next slide, please. We asked students how their stress and anxiety levels changed before the pandemic, and about 80% of students said that their stress and anxiety levels are either slightly or much higher than before referring to before the pandemic. This could potentially be attributed to the changes in social interaction that students have had with their peers and their teachers during this school year, combined with the expectations of their teachers and the need to process major events going on around them, like the pandemic, the election, and anything else that might be happening that would affect people's lives, and increased isolation, often occurring through quarantining, often affects students negatively, and they have really no control over that, which could also contribute to this.
So this question asks, how have you stayed in contact with family and friends during the pandemic? So 80% of students who responded said they have been able to maintain and grow relationships with their friends and family during the pandemic. And the majority of students have been able to stay in contact with their friends and family. The emphasis on using virtual communication such as social media and FaceTime, as well as the emphasis on mask wearing, displays the responsibility many students show for others' health in the pandemic while trying to maintain their friendships.
So now we're going to be talking about specifically school-related issues that have kind of come to light during COVID. So if you could go to the next slide. So first we asked just kind of a simple question. I learned a lot in school. Over 60% of students said that they learned a lot in school, much less or less than before, meaning before the pandemic hit. About a quarter of the students saw no change in how much they learned. Fewer class meetings and kind of face-to-face interaction in school can really attribute to this. Because it might feel like we're learning a little bit less content, even if we're not, just because we don't have as much interaction as we're used to. So if you could go to the next slide, please.
We asked another simple question about how often do you worry about school issues, and about 70% of students said they worried about school fairly often or very often. We think it would be valuable to create follow-up questions in our next survey to gather more detailed data about how students feel post-pandemic. So the next slide.
So this question asked respondents, during the past 30 days, did you feel tense, nervous, or worried every day for more than 2 weeks in a row? So although less than half of students responded yes to this question, it is a sizable minority, especially compared to previous known statistics. So for example, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is this question generally is about 20%. However, this is not unexpected in the context of the pandemic, but it is important to find ways to respond to this area of need.
On the next slide, we asked, is there a teacher or other school adult that you can talk to if you have a problem? Over half of the students who responded say they do have a teacher or a school adult they can talk to if they have a problem. Having a trusted adult is beneficial to students in making school a safe place for social and emotional learning. This is something that we would like to work with you on to make sure that every student that has at least one adult they feel they can talk to at school. So next slide, please.
Almost 500 students said that they felt supported in their academics this year, which was really great to see. It's a testament to the teachers' hard work during this year and obviously in previous years. So we thought this was a super positive result. And teachers and administrators have been unsung heroes throughout this entire pandemic, but this shows that everything they've been doing for us and all the other students has been paying off.
This question asked, if you are in a hybrid / in-person learning model, do you feel safe in school COVID-wise? And we were very pleased to see that the majority of students feel safe in the building from COVID. This again is a testament to the hard work of teachers and administrators put in every day to make students feel safe, and to make this number even higher, teachers should continue to enforce mask wearing, the one-way hallways, and sanitization.
So our next section of the survey was specifically for students who have had to self-isolate or quarantine throughout the school year, or if they were currently quarantined. So if you could go to the next slide. Thank you. So we just asked a simple yes or no question. However, these numbers are up to date as of February 4th when the survey was administered. It was kind of surprising for us in a good way to see that the majority of high school students have not had to quarantine. However, again, these numbers probably have changed. However, the mental health of those that have had to experience this is vital in understanding the long-term effects that the pandemic will have on not only the general public, but the youth in particular, where we're so used to having these social interactions pretty regularly at school. So that will definitely be something that we'd like to follow up on if we do a follow-up survey. Yeah, so if you could go to the next slide. Thank you.
And next question we asked was basically, how supported do you feel while you were in quarantine? And the responses to this question were very varied in the levels of support students receive while having to quarantine. And the majority of students' answers indicate that they do feel supported when they are either quarantining or self-isolating, which is, again, a real testament to our teachers who are really helping out our students who have to self-isolate or quarantine.
This question asked respondents while they were quarantining, how well did their teachers communicate with them about assignments and materials? So also in response to the previous slide, we then asked what could be done for students to feel more supported. So most included responses like teachers being more flexible with due dates and workload, personal/emotional check-ins, and overall stronger communication. Many students said in their responses that being zoomed in to class was extremely helpful to still feel connected and benefited from learning the context in that way. Other students also discussed that having frequent Zoom or email check-ins with their teachers were helpful and academically and emotionally.
The next slide asks why you were in quarantining. Did school adults such as guidance counselors reach out to you for support? This question was evenly split with answers regarding emotional support for quarantine students by adults at school, like guidance counselors.
All right, so that's the bulk of the day that we're going to be showing, and we just wanted to kind of wrap it up with some takeaways and themes. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this survey was definitely able to shed a lot of light on how the pandemic's impacting youth, specifically students, outside of what we already knew through our own experiences. We feel like the feedback is vital to understand the long and short-term effects that the pandemic's going to have on students and their academics. And an overall theme from the results that we definitely saw was how important the connection between staff and students is, regardless of if it's related to academics. The connections are absolutely vital to student mental health, and making sure all students have a trusted adult is a way to advance this and make sure students feel that support network that I know a lot of teachers really work to provide.
For the next steps, we are hoping to create a similar survey to understand how student mental health has changed or stayed the same, as we have just switched learning models for the third time this year. And we intend to work closely with the WMHS guidance department, the GMS student support staff, and the school committee to implement these results in decision-making for the reopening of schools next year, and to improve the mental health of all students district-wide.
So that concludes most of our presentation. So thank you all for listening. And I know it's a lot to really soak in, especially with the high school data, but we really appreciate your support and just having your ear with this. And thank you to the Galvin student support staff and administration, as well as the high school guidance department and our administration. We definitely couldn't have done this without you, and a special thanks to our adult advisor who's on this call, Catherine Dangra. She's been absolutely amazing in supporting us. So I think we'd be happy to answer some questions or take some feedback if anybody has anything.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing I said 8 or 9 months ago when I first met all of you. I feel totally inadequate as a human being being in your presence. I don't know what the rest of you did in high school, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't on a youth council. So you are all so impressive. I appreciate all the work you put in to try to change the world in your small way. So that's wonderful. My one question was, you talk about doing a subsequent survey. Is the intent that these surveys would continue even into the next academic year, or is it really meant to do one in the next month or so? What is the plan on subsequent surveys?
Yeah, so we actually had a working group meeting, just super brief, to kind of get on the same page about this presentation, and we had touched on it. So we're thinking about sending out a similar survey to the one that we did, since we've just changed learning models. Just to compare those results. So feeling safer in the building COVID-wise, workload and teacher support, just to kind of compare those results and see how they've changed. But I think that mental health is one of those things that the stigma around it is probably never going to go away. And so we're always going to have to work to promote good mental health and support our peers and everyone around us. So I think that this is something that we'd like to continue. But right now it's just very pandemic focused, as you know, right now I think everybody kind of has to take things one step at a time, but it is something that we're hoping to continue. So I hope that answers your question.
No, that's great, Lauren. Thank you. And thank you all for all you do.
Stephen?
Thank you. To echo Mike, that was fantastic. You all are very impressive. Some great data points. It takes a lot to sort of survey your own peers. And even the answers that you were getting back, I would find it hard not to internalize some of that. You start hearing numbers like 1 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. You start looking at the people around you. So, and it's some emotional stuff. So being able to kind of go through it sort of objectively and relay the information that you got, exemplary, fantastic. I was thinking, as you mentioned that you were looking to doing a follow-up, a couple of things caught me or stuck out to me. In the middle school survey, there was the question about how students were managing stress, and over a third of the students said they weren't sure. And then that also crept up in the high school questions, where if you had a trusted adult, and that was about 23% said that they weren't sure. And that one stuck out because there were more kids that weren't sure than said, no, I don't have one. So I would just say, maybe if you looked at some of those areas, is there a way to, is it the question that needed clarifying, or, so just as you go to your second phase, just sort of, is there a reason that people answered not sure? It could just be that they weren't sure, but it seemed like that was sort of a high number. And then it was interesting that students felt that 80% that they were academically supported, but then not necessarily while they were quarantining, which I thought was interesting. So sort of where that would come out. But just fantastic sort of numbers to look into and some great insight. And I applaud you for not only initiating it, but executing on a high level. Really, really good job.
Thank you. Just to respond to some of that confusion. So I think that that's something that if we do that follow-up survey, we'll probably have Alyssa make it because she made the high school one and it was fantastic. So I think that's something that we need to clarify, is what is a trusted adult, and what are some healthy coping mechanisms. And then maybe in the meantime, while we're making that survey, we put out those resources. So yeah, I think we still have a lot of next steps, but as far as right now goes, I think that that's our plan for now. So.
That's great. Thank you.
Amy.
I thank you guys for that presentation. It was really good. You guys put a lot of work into that, and it shows. I have a couple of questions for you. As far as the survey goes, is that something that you created, or was it something that was done nationally or locally? How were the questions created?
Yeah, I can answer this one. So I created the entire survey. So if anyone has any specific questions, feel free to reach out to me at any time. There was a sample survey that was sent to me by Catherine that I did base some of the questions off of, kind of took some ideas and themes and reworded them and worked them into our own. But some of them were also things that we had talked about wanting to make sure we included, like quarantine support and things like that. We wanted to make it really specific to the pandemic and students' experiences. So it was a combination of borrowing questions, rewording themes, and our own ideas.
Perfect.
And the guidance department had some input too, correct, Alyssa?
Yes, definitely. They took a look at the kind of things we wanted, and they had some questions there too.
Okay. And then I had a couple other questions too. Going forward, kind of to piggyback off of what Stephen was saying, going forward with the questions, I don't know if you did any open-ended type questions, if it's possible to put or to ask students, how would you feel better supported? What's the students' take on how they would want to be supported? To kind of get the feel. They might say they do or don't feel supported, but maybe going a little bit a step further to say what in their eyes would help them feel more supported, or have somebody safe to go to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we did have some open-ended questions. We didn't even get close to including all of them. It was quite a big survey, and we didn't want to have an hour-long presentation and leave no time for discussion. So I can definitely send you a longer presentation that covers more results if that's something you're interested in. But we had questions such as like, what's your single greatest challenge with the pandemic? And that was an open response question. And a lot of the ones where students had the opportunity to pick more than one or even just pick one answer, there was an other where they could elaborate if there was nothing that really matched what they wanted to say. They had the room to let us know exactly what was happening.
Perfect. Yeah, if you have the opportunity to send that out, I'd love to see the rest of it. I'd appreciate that. And then my last question is, for the students that said they wanted to receive help from a counselor or something, how was that handled? Or has that been handled yet?
That was a separate survey sent out by the guidance department. So we could see all the answers for our survey. It was anonymous, so we didn't know who said what, but they created their own really short survey saying, what's your name? Do you want someone to reach out? How soon do you need someone to reach out? And only the guidance department could see those answers for the sake of confidentiality and trust to make sure that people who needed help or wanted help felt comfortable reaching out. And they did have some people respond, and they reached out to whoever asked within the time period that they requested.
Thank you, and again, great job, you guys.
Kevin?
Yeah, I'll echo what my colleague said. This was a really good job. I think there's been so much anecdotal evidence about what the experience of students is in education. And there's just starting to be data kind of emerging nationwide. But what a benefit to not have to look at national data, but to actually know what our students here are experiencing. Really a great job and great presentation. I think that was really, really helpful. One of the things that really stood out to me was some of the information on the high school students, particularly asking about stress and anxiety. And over 80% were either slight or much higher anxiety. So I thought that that was really interesting and something I think that certainly our team in the high school can consider as they continue to work with students. The other thing that I'm wondering is, so you kind of hint around at in some of the questions, at least those that you shared with us, about isolation or feelings of isolation. Were there any direct questions either about isolation or depression in particular? I'm just curious.
I think most of the questions were kind of talking about feeling isolated and not necessarily developing depressed feelings. Like, I feel like there's a little bit of a difference, and that's something that I know I keep harping on the follow-up survey. But now that we have this data, I feel like we can really go into specific questions and say, have you been feeling more depressed lately? Have you sought out a counselor or something like that? Just to kind of get more specific answers rather than asking general questions and having general answers.
And I also think that when they send out the actual youth risk behavior survey that sent out by the health department, they will be able to get more specific detail on depression and how people related that to isolation.
Yeah, that's a great point. You can definitely triangulate, I think, some of those things using all these instruments. So that's really, really helpful. The other thing that really struck me is I think you mentioned several times praising our faculty and staff and all those. And I think that was very much deserved. And I appreciate you kind of noticing that because, I think some of these results, really speak to, I think, the dedication of those that we have here working with us and working with all of you in what were really incredibly difficult circumstances. I echo your praise of everyone, the faculty and staff, because I don't think much of this would have been possible, or any of it would have been possible without their really hard work. So I'm glad you recognize that as students as well, and I echo that too. So great job. I appreciate it, and I agree with my colleague on this. I would love the full survey if and when you're ready to share that out. So thank you.
Amy?
Hi, thank you. Thanks, everyone. I actually saw you present last night at the town council meeting, so this is great to see it again. I do have a couple of questions. I actually have a Galvin Middle School student who took the survey, and I remember she came home and she was confused with one of the answers because she wanted to combine like one part of an answer with another part of an answer. And I noticed in one of the questions, so if we're gonna do another survey, I wouldn't lump things together so we can get a clearer, like when you lump tense, nervous, and worried, what if someone's tense but not worried? So we'd wanna like really find out what it is, and I'd like to see if we could break the data down by grade, because a stress for a 5th grader might be different for stress from an 8th grader. So, and the real objective, I think, of these surveys is how can we help you? We know this data and we can see it nationally, like, but what can we do? And everyone's measuring stick is different, right? What stresses me out might not stress the student sitting next to me. And what brings on anxiety in one student might not be the same anxiety as another student. And maybe it's more of an organizational skill, and they might benefit from an executive functioning coach and not really an adjustment counselor. And I think that's where we're going with these surveys, is what kind of resources we can bring to the students. So if we could break the data down and really find out what these students need, that would be really helpful. And maybe the open-ended questions that we didn't see tonight could help us dig a little deeper. Is that what we're getting at with these surveys, is what we need to bring tools and coping mechanisms in, right? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of speak to what you said about the Galvin survey, we didn't actually get to work as one-on-one with the support staff as we had hoped to in the beginning. So we had sent them a couple of like drafts of what we had in mind for the Galvin one, but we didn't get to have as many meetings to plan as we did with the high school. So that's definitely something we would look into doing further if and when we do a second survey.
And when they took the survey at the beginning, did they circle what grade they were in so you could break this down by grade?
So I'm actually not sure. I don't believe that we got access to that survey. I don't think I did. But that's definitely something that we can kind of ask about and let you know. And if we do send you a longer presentation, we can try to include that data.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious. Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. I certainly want to join, everyone that's already said what a terrific job. I mean, the Wakefield Youth Council is probably one of the most, probably one of the busiest and most worthy, groups that is functioning in town today. You guys are just such a dynamic group of leaders and young people, and represent the very best of Wakefield. And again and again, our congratulations and thank you for everything that you put into this. And thanks to Catherine Dingra for, it isn't easy to be an advisor to such a lofty and worthy a group of young people. But you have to know when to step in, when to step away, when to watch the chaos happen, and when to provide the supports you do. But certainly, Catherine, their work is certainly, I'm sure, representative of some time and energy and passion that you put into this as well. So certainly thank you for everything that you do in support of the Youth Council. I'm sure they appreciate it. So a couple things, just a couple points. One of the things that I really enjoyed, certainly at the end, with the two different slides being takeaway and next step. So those are two different things, and I think there's some real valuable information, especially to me in the takeaways. And so I wanted to talk about some of the takeaways a bit, if you could. I appreciate that the next steps are obviously some things you've already spoken about, but you noted three takeaways. And I would say that they make perfect sense, but I'd like to dig a little deeper into some of those takeaways, especially without putting the superintendent or the team on the hook as well. But I'm sure there are takeaways here that we all can appreciate, and there are takeaways. I'm sure that there are some action items that I'm sure the administration at the Galvin and the high school want to sort of ponder and think about as well. So this is sort of a subsequent question to to the superintendent as well. But if I could ask the youth council sort of two questions and anyone or everyone, whatever thoughts you have with regard to your takeaways. In any of the questions or in any of the data, some of them were categorized and they were sort of grouped under topics. What surprised you and what did not surprise you as far as our results?
I can go first if we want to just go in order so everybody has a chance to answer. I think the thing that surprised me the most, I guess I can do positive and kind of something that we need to improve. So something that we need to improve, I think what surprised me the most was having a trusted adult. So if you combine the people that weren't sure and said no, it was about a 50-50 answer with being yes and no or not sure. I think that's something that is so important to teachers and having those connections with students that I think they would want to work towards, as well as students being a little bit more open to receive that help. I think the thing that surprised me the most in a more positive sense with how many students feel supported in their academics. I really think that that's where the importance of, at least at the high school, with the PM learning blocks that we have, because that is like true one-on-one or, a few with a teacher instructional time where students can get the extra support that they need, whether that be a lesson going a little bit slower or providing more detail on a homework assignment, or even just extra help for a quiz next day. So I think that these are both some things that we really need to consider moving forward, is building stronger connections with adults and continuing to kind of provide that support with trusted adults, and also having more one-on-one instructional time with teachers.
Well, I couldn't agree more with Lauren. As a student who doesn't go to Wakefield High, I was definitely surprised by how many people do feel stressed or anxious. I've been in a hybrid model all year. We just moved to a fully in-person model, so it's a little different. But when I was doing online school, I definitely felt very, very stressed, very worried, very surprised that kind of continued into a hybrid learning model. So that really surprised me. I'm very happy with how teachers are supporting students in that way, and supporting them and giving them extra help, giving them time to talk to them, build connections. That's so important to building a good classroom community, and I'm really happy and surprised and glad that's happening.
So what surprised me the most out of all of this information was specifically the question: during the past 30 days, did you feel tense, nervous, or worried every day for 2 or more weeks in a row? And the amount that it was almost 50-50. So that really surprised me in the sense, and I think that we really need to improve upon that. It's like promoting better and important coping mechanisms, and making sure that information is available to all members of the all students at the Galvin and at the high school.
So for my own interpretation, the gap between how students felt supported when they're in person or in a hybrid model compared to when they were quarantining was definitely one of the most surprising aspects, because obviously the circumstances they're going to be different. It's inevitable that there's going to be differences, but I think that gap was something that we hadn't really expected. We were really glad to see that so many students feel supported in their academics, but I don't think we were really prepared to see that big of a jump from when students are in person and when students are quarantining. But kind of building off of the trusted adult train that we're all kind of hopping on, I was glad to see that a majority of students did have a trusted adult, but it's also kind of a wake-up call for everyone reading the survey results to kind of say, hey, there's almost half the school that doesn't. So I think that was kind of a double-ended sword right there.
I have to agree, I was most surprised about how much the stress and anxiety increased, even though I did think it would increase a little because it is a pandemic, but I didn't expect it to be that much. I think we definitely need to focus and work on that. But I was happy to see how many students do feel supported, but there's still 20% of the students that don't, so that's also a problem. But it's good to hear that around 80% do feel supported by teachers.
Yeah, these are all good points. I would say for me, I wasn't really surprised with the fact that stress or anxiety levels among students had become slightly higher among the majority over the pandemic, just because we're in such an unprecedented time. Students have had to shift from learning on Zoom. I know for some students, they can't really learn through a computer. As to in person, it's not the same. They can't pick up material. They might not see their teachers as often. So it may cause them some unnecessary stress that they may not feel in a normal school year. By was how safe people feel regarding COVID with in-person learning, considering that at times, even though teachers do a great job of implementing the one-way hallway rules, sanitization, and they make sure kids stay socially distanced, I don't know, I feel like students may have had more concerns regarding those aspects than results indicated in the survey.
I think we got everybody.
So what impressive analysis too. I mean, I appreciate that each of you had a thoughtful answer, practically, at the ready, which either means you anticipated the question, which you may not have done, but certainly it means that you have appreciated and you've worked through the data, that you've come to some conclusions, and that's critically important. One of the things that we in schools for years now have been a collection of data, right? But what's critically important and most useful is how we use that. What are the, as you say, the takeaways? What are the next steps? What are the things that we're going to do to make use of that data to improve, students' learning or improve people's, sense of self? So again, congratulations for this the terrific work, for your analysis, for your presentation, and I look forward to the next survey results, and I suppose more importantly, your work and the work of the staff, and making sure that students that need the type of outreach and a level of comfort and a new welcoming, that they get exactly the type of supports that they need. And this is some important and eye-opening work. And again, thank you guys very, very much. You make us proud every day. Thanks for everything you're doing.
So I will, I'll close with the committee member comments to admit that when I was in high school and I had to present in front of my class, I would often pretend I was sick so I did not have to go in. And here you guys are on television, right, presenting to a bunch of adults like it's nothing. So bravo, guys, you really did a nice job. Great content. I am looking forward to reading those open-ended responses. I think that'll give us some really additional kind of interesting insight. And Ali, the fact that you are an 8th grader, you are a classmate of my twins. I believe you beat my son in the geography bee a couple of years ago. And when I saw you on TV with the town council last night, I was like, that is Ali, and he is in your grade, and that is like so impressive. The fact that you are an 8th grader, it blows my mind. So an extra special, nicely done to you, my friend. Thank you guys all for coming. Mike, it looks like you've got one more comment you want to make.
Yeah, this is wonderful work, but this isn't all going to magically go away when COVID goes away either. These things continue, and I think we have to continue to focus on ways we can create a better environment for people who suffer with anxiety, stress as well. So, part of the reason for asking about the survey and keeping this going is so we can keep a tab on how things are progressing. But that's why I sort of hope this continues going forward into September and subsequent academic years, because the problems aren't going to magically go away, and we need to continue to work on finding ways to improve the situation so that everybody can thrive. Thank you.
Well, can I just say one thing? That we did administer the YRBS in April for grades 7 through 12. So that will give us another snapshot of some key data around social emotional learning. And that data will come back in the midsummer. So you have an opportunity to take a look at that information. So it'll kind of complement some of the work the Youth Council did.
Great.
Great. Thank you, everyone. And again, thank you for the time and a wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much for having us. Have a good night.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Catherine, thank you for bringing up, Catherine Dinger brought up a question that Amy Wall, you had in our last meeting, which was about when does the YRBS survey, when was it administered, and when does the information come back? So I'm glad you brought that up. That was going to be one of my questions. And again, just to remind the committee that group is made up of predominantly juniors and seniors, right? And so it really just an exceptional group. But I'm looking forward to continuing our relationship with them and having them return. On the takeaway slide, this notion of for us to improve our schools and what's happening in the buildings, that student feedback is vital to that, is really critical for us. And I think Amy Lehman asked the $100,000 question. How can we help, right? So with this data, what do we do? How can we help? And so I think one of the things that you're going to hear more from us as administrators is how are we intentionally building in time and space for students to check in with their teachers? You know, Lauren talked about the PM learning blocks as just an opportunity to be able to connect with teachers during a very busy scheduled day. So little things go a long way, but none of this is missed on us, and we're looking forward to talking more about that as we move forward. So moving on in the agenda, I'd like to introduce Danielle Collins and Christine Bufagna to do an update for food service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Danielle Collins. I hope you can hear me well. I see some new faces out there, so nice meeting you. I can't wait to meet you in person. That'll be wonderful. We just wanted to offer a quick update to let you know how things are going. I do have a little presentation. I'll keep it short and sweet to let you know where we stand with food insecurity, along with our meal distribution. Get that a little clearly. So I wanted to share with you, first and foremost, that meals are provided free of charge. The USDA is fully funding our programs throughout the remainder of the year in all of our schools. So what that means is your children can come to school, know that they'll receive a healthy meal each and every day. We're also simultaneously doing meal distribution, and that runs every single Wednesday from 10 a.m. until 12 noon. So folks are entitled to take advantage of both. We're here to help families. The meal distribution actually is, students are welcome from age 0 to 21. So once again, if there are younger children at home or college students at home, they're more than welcome to take advantage of the program, along with the meals not being provided in schools and weekend meals. So families, please do take advantage of this. This is a resource for you. It's fully funded through all the way through June of 2022. So actually meal distribution will continue all the way through the summer in this Wednesday model, and then meals will be free for all of next year. Once again, when we talk about stress and anxiety, Massachusetts had the highest increase in the country on meal insecurity. You know, typically we are a wealthy state, and many folks that are experiencing food insecurity are experiencing this for the first time in their lives. So it's crucial that we provide these services, and I just want to get the word out to everyone. If I can be of service to you, please reach out. My email is there. I'm in the office. I'm happy to help. I just wanted to review some numbers. I'm a data kind of person. Our meal distribution and meals served in school. So these are some tallies. I just did a few little summary numbers just to give you, you know, some idea of how many meals we're serving. But just to try to offer an explanation about meal distribution. So right now, it takes so long for the kids to get through the line because we're, keeping socially distant and we're making sure all the kids are safe. The lines move a little slower, and each one is one meal at a time. Families coming through meal distribution are entitled to both breakfast and lunch for the 7 days of the week. So just to let you know why, in meal distribution, families are getting a full pack of meals for the week, fresh fruits and vegetables every week to accompany their meals. So there's just some data to put some numbers out. If you don't mind advancing to the next slide. This is the one I like. This is my go-to. I like to see things graphically. The blue bars represent the meal distribution meals served, and the orange bars represent meals in schools. So if I didn't include this month's numbers, because if I give you a half a month, it just uses the data and it throws you off. So this is the first month since last year in March that meals in schools actually were greater than meal distribution. So, but if you look, the total for both is higher. And it just speaks to the need that we are seeing in the community. And I have to share that folks in need, they hide in plain sight. We are, we're lucky in Massachusetts. Folks are neighbor helping neighbor. And I just want to promote once again, if anyone needs a hand, please let me know. We can usually make accommodations for almost anything, but the need is there. Meal distribution is going very well. And once again, we intend to continue through this. So if you want to move to the next line, waivers continue. So once again, we just found out in the past few weeks that the USDA, not only are they planning to fund our meals all the way through June of 2022, so all the way through the school year. Meal distribution, though, I did find out this week, actually Friday, that meal distribution will be coming to a close at the close of summer, because the hope is that most kids will be back in school at that time. So once again, we'll be serving in the seamless summer option all the way through the summer, every Wednesday from 10 a.m. until 12 noon, and meals are free for all students. And those are, students through meal distribution of all ages within the household, along with meals in schools. And so then, thank you, and questions. Does anyone have any questions? Or Christine, do you have anything to add?
I would just like to add, I just want to thank Danielle and her staff, because in the past year, they've had to pivot and then repivot and to adjust to changing schedules, changing accommodations for families. I know meal distributions. Danielle is being so humble about what they've done for families in this community. So I just wanted to give you and your staff a shout out and thank you for all you've done.
Shout out to my staff, because they're the best. Honestly, I really do have to give a shout out to the staff. We have national shortages of paper goods.
Yeah.
12 items are out on every single delivery, and somehow, some way, they keep showing up every day, giving their best, and I cannot thank them enough, because they are the reason the trade moves.
Mike?
Danielle, as part of the interaction with the folks on Wednesdays, are you referring them to the Wakefield Food Pantry as well to sort of supplement what you're giving them? Because there's certainly capacity, and they give out food on Tuesday and Thursdays. So, and where you're doing breakfast and lunch, they could do dinner or whatever, but they have capacity. I'm just curious if you refer them or not.
Yeah, so we have several different things. We try to put flyers within our meal bags. One is we like to include allergen information, lead information, but also any connection information. We put flyers in. Periodically, we throw different things in just to try to keep people on board. But anyone that I try to connect frequently with families and figure out what resources they may need. And I do referrals all the time. So please, once again, if you know of any families that have any need whatsoever, it doesn't necessarily mean that, meal distribution will fulfill their needs. So yes, we do that. We actually have some additional materials coming out to the state, although the training hasn't happened yet as to how we're going to pull these resources together. But yes, I have been sharing, but we can continue to share. And if you have information, I actually reached out because I had a flyer regarding summer that I shared that all of us together, if we can share what's available, that way families can get whatever they need.
Yeah, I'll definitely get you some material on that. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Stephen?
Hi, thank you, Danielle. Really do appreciate everything that the team has been doing for all of the families in Wakefield. I've gotten to see firsthand sort of what the meal distribution looked like on Wednesdays, and it's really good in the summertime because you get a ton of fresh produce, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's great. I'm curious about, because you mentioned how sort of the lunch lines have slowed down a little bit, and I know that we've had condensed schedules during the day. How have you had to pivot to deliver meals to students if their lunch block has been condensed? How do we know that they're having time to eat that meal that is so critical? And I know, like, for my youngest, for my kindergartner, she eats lunch at 10:30, and so it's important that she gets like 15 minutes to consume whatever she can consume. So I'm just curious what sort of strategies you've used to make sure that their needs are being met at that level.
So I'd love to share. In the beginning, the CDC offered some recommendation, and in this process, they've actually changed their recommendations. Initially, I was not allowed to have students congregate in any way, shape, or form. So every single meal had to be self-contained, including the utensils necessary to eat them, you know, the milk, the juice, everything had to be provided individually, one-on-one with every single student. That guidance has since changed. The guidance now is that, okay, so as long as we keep the things on the line, as long as the students aren't congregating to get something like a condiment, like we used to have condiment stations out front, we still are not allowed to do that. But the students can actually, now that they're finding that COVID doesn't necessarily spread through items, students can take things along the line. So that certainly moves the process along a little bit more quickly. We time the students. How do I know how long it takes? I time them. I run little science experiments. I see when the last person, I mean, that's really the only, this is honestly my welcome back meeting with our staff was, you're a frontier. We are doing things for the first time that we have never done in this way. And you are my pioneers. So until we do it, we don't know. So I actually timed the kids, and the longest time through the last child that entered the cafeteria to the moment they got their food was 7.5 minutes. Once things got, now in the first couple of days of anything, you know, there are stragglers and it doesn't exactly follow course, but we do this so that we can ensure that students are getting a healthy meal and have time to consume it. We find it more challenging to keep them focused on eating instead of, like, they haven't been around one another. This is the social, you know, activity that they're craving right now. So I want them to eat a healthy meal and be with one another simultaneously, and that is the biggest challenge. It's not one size fits all. Every single school has designed their own system, and we monitor this so that the goal is that every student has enough time on eating to get a healthy meal at school.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As odd as it sounds, I really appreciate the idea of you there with like a stopwatch. I can just picture it.
Very bizarre. So
somehow that makes me feel better. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So Danielle, I have one other point. So at the food pantry, there are many times where we're presented with grants, but part of the condition is that they're for specific programs, feeding the elderly or feeding children. So, you know, and many times we don't apply for the grants that we would likely get if we had a program in place. So I'm not sure if you've ever met Maureen Miller at the pantry. If you haven't, you absolutely need to meet Maureen, and the two of you need to chat, because I think there's a lot of synergies there that quite honestly will benefit both sides.
We've chatted electronically. Well, just to let you know, if there are any grant opportunities, I'm open to it, honestly. I've applied for like 4 grants this year. We only received 1, but that's okay. Hey, as long as we're, you know, applying and trying to make everything better for our students and for our programs and for our families in the community, I'm open to almost anything. And I will reach out to her and see if there are any resources. There have been a couple of opportunities that have come my way that we just didn't. Grants are funny that way because oftentimes they have to be linked to public schools because honestly, I think they want the data. So if an opportunity comes your way and I can be a partner, count me in. I'm in.
Excellent. Thank you.
For sure.
Any other questions for Danielle? Okay. I always love when you come, Danielle. You're like so enthusiastic. It like,
I'm running out of energy. It's a little late.
You wouldn't know it. You seem
Positive
very.
feedback.
She's like this all the time.
Yeah.
A little cup of tea. Well, thank you all. I can't wait to meet you all in person. I've met many of you, but I can't wait to meet the rest of you.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you,
Thank
Danielle.
you very much.
Take care. Good night.
Thank you, Danielle. We're very fortunate to have Danielle. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Her and her staff have been amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay to move on, Madam Chair?
Yep.
Good. This brings us to the last two items on our agenda. Just to kind of recap where we are with the school calendar. In the last meeting, I don't know if the community, if anyone who's tuned in was able to watch the last school committee meeting, we proposed a calendar in the last meeting which had 2 professional days on September 1st and 2nd, and staff was off Friday the 3rd, and then there's the Rosh Hashanah, there's the holidays, with the first student day on Thursday, September 9th, okay? And since we proposed that calendar, we put it on the table in our meeting on the 28th, which is Wednesday the 28th. So since that time, we've gotten a lot of feedback from the community, from stakeholders, from parents, and we've also had a lot of feedback from the WEA and our teachers. And so, you know, we've looked closely at this calendar, and we feel like we've collaborated and worked on this calendar for weeks and weeks and weeks. This is a particularly challenging calendar for a couple reasons. And one of the things that I don't know if we talked a lot about is just the context of COVID, right? So returning in the fall, there are still a number of questions for us in regard to safety and mitigation strategies that we're going to need to have in place, students that need remote services, and you heard earlier this evening in questions that were asked, you know, Kevin asked about, you know, how do we transition students back? And you know, the more we think about this and think about our planning and think about professional development, you know, we look at this calendar and we think, are there better options, right? Or is this the best option that we have at this point in time? You know, we know that we've taken feedback from Will Cavanaris. He's on the call with us this evening. Will has worked really hard at a number of different iterations. He presented another alternative to the calendar just this afternoon, right? And we appreciate his efforts. We talked about them this afternoon. I spoke to our chair. I've gotten some information from other parents. But just in thinking about and hearing, even thinking about it tonight in this meeting and listening to students, right, talk about, you know, their need for time and space, their need, you know, for us to be able to start in a way that doesn't feel rushed. It just kind of, I think, affirms for me, and I think for us, I'll let Kara join in a moment, but I think it affirms for me and I think for us that I think that the calendar that we proposed last week is really the best calendar, the best choice for our students and for our families and for our faculty under the circumstances, right, of this kind of where we are and just what the return in the fall is going to bring and the number of unknowns and questions that we're going to have. I'll be honest with you, there's a number of trade-offs and there's no kind of easy way to piece this Sudoku puzzle together. But again, I think based on the information that we've collected and feedback that we've collected, we think that this is the best option for students and families. And so I don't know if anyone has any questions. Kara, I don't know if you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it. I think we've all, I agree. I think we've had several meetings with different groups, and we've talked this through, and, I think Doug really covered it, so I'll just add that I really support what was put on the table as well, just in terms of being the best calendar for students, families, and our teaching staff.
Tom?
So if I could, as perhaps a next step, I could read the motion, and then maybe committee members could speak to the motion.
Sure.
I move that the school committee approve the 2021-2022 school calendar as presented by the superintendent.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. So discussion and questions. I thought someone kind of half raised their hand, but I don't remember who it was. Oh, Stephen, your hand, I cannot get used to that little hand in the left-hand corner.
I keep thinking it's better than, I don't know, it's easier for me. I think not necessarily on the dates. I had a question about if the hours would go back to normal. Because I know that we're working on a different day schedule now. So I know some parents are concerned about whether or not, that would go back to the norm. So I'm not sure if we have that kind of insight at this time.
I think we do, Stephen. I think our intent is to return to the normal times. I know we've actually learned a lot during COVID, and with the number of different schedules that we've needed to create, I think we're looking to make some changes to the high school schedule when we return. But the start and end times would be what they were. Would they be what they were pre-COVID? Yes.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Thank you. Yeah, this is definitely an issue I've gotten a lot of correspondence about until, of course, the logo stuff kicked up again this week. So I know I have a lot of parents in my family and parents that surround me in my neighborhood that prefer an earlier start date. So what I wanted to ask specifically, it seems to hinge upon, of course, because my gut instinct would have been to do one day with teachers back and to start the week before, so we can continue the next week on that Tuesday following day off. Can you maybe dive a little bit deeper into how utilizing those 2 days for teachers, what specific plans are in place that necessitates those 2 days rather than the one day and starting that week?
Sure. Do you want to talk about PD?
Sure. So I think the way, not all of the details are fleshed out for the 2 full days. We're still in the process of planning all of our professional development for next year. But I think the way that we've looked in the past at the opening days for staff has been a combination of building principals having an opportunity to welcome back their staff, to have some building-based time. We've also tried to build in time for teachers and staff to connect with each other, to have any meetings related to student preparation in their classrooms. And then that second day is more of, scheduled around some content, PD or anything specific to the different roles within the district. I know this year, as you heard in our last school committee meeting, we do have some professional development planned in connection with our math curriculum review and just the implementation of those new resources. And it's ideal for us to get that professional development in early in the school year before teachers have students in front of them. So that's right now where we are. We do have Will and I are actually in process of planning out a professional development committee meeting that will take place next week, just to get some more feedback around how, probably more so how we're going to structure the half days throughout the school year next year. We'll have 8 half professional development days next year. And, right now our plan is to continue with our 5-part series, which offers teachers choice in terms of different professional development that's relevant to their practice. And then we'll have 3 other half days that will probably have more of a content focus.
So
thank you.
I just like to add there as well, Kevin. As we listened to our students tonight and we listened about this mental health survey, as we're looking at the data, this idea of being rushed, one of the things that we are all going to need to contend with is the positives that have come with COVID, right? And that is, it's just a different work day, right? There's been more opportunity for people to Zoom from home. There's been opportunities to slow down. And I think this schedule gives us an opportunity to do the work that needs to be done without rushing. So the notion of having one day, normally when we open school, there's time that teachers need in their buildings, and there's time that the district needs, right? To squeeze that into one day for the sake of the calendar, and then to follow that with another rushed one student day or even 1.5 days, it feels like a lot. And I'll tell you, to be completely honest with the group, I was kind of head down when we started this with the calendar. I thought I was head down, we need to get back, we need to get days in, we need to look at learning loss. And, I've kind of come full circle on this in listening to people and understand that it needs to be done in a thoughtful way, but it also needs to be done intentionally and at a rate that people can come back at. We're welcoming, hundreds of students that have yet to be back in class for a whole year. Teachers have been in modified schedules. We're still not in pre-COVID schedules, right? We're still not there. Teachers are going to need time and space. And so this notion of having one PD day and then having another PD day a week later, it feels like we're just trying to squeeze it all in to get it in. And I understand the plus minus on this, but the more we work on it, the more we think about it, the more we talk with families, we think that this is the best of all options that we had to look at. So I hope that answers your question, Kevin.
It does, thank you.
Amy Lehman?
Hi. I remember it was 2 or 3 years ago, Scott Farber and his daughters came to the school committee to talk about the Jewish holiday, Rosh Hashanah. And I think this is the first year that we actually won't have school for that holiday, and I'm happy for them, because I know that sometimes, based on what Scott was saying, they would sometimes get homework or tests or what have you. And so I think this works out for them, so I'm happy.
Amy Wall.
Thanks. I've always been a proponent of having the school year start later. I know some people want to have it start earlier so it ends earlier. I think that starting it later, kind of to piggyback off of what Doug said, the whole mental health issue, our kids are only little once and summer ends really quickly. And to just have that last week, even if it's a week, with our kids and having them out when it's still warm out and nice, I think it's important for everybody's health. And, maybe that's just a personal preference, but I've always thought that going back after Labor Day is more beneficial. And now, like what Amy just said, with Rosh Hashanah, that our other families are able to celebrate that and not have to worry about school.
Anybody else? Tom?
Thank you. Yeah, this to me it's an interesting calendar. It's like this perfect storm of calendar planning, right? That we've got we are driven by the reality of the actual world calendar that all things have to sort of comply and conform to. And then everything that the superintendent spoke of earlier, I couldn't agree more with regard to the complications that are faced by teachers and students and families. I think if there's anything that we can all be 100% sure of, is that whatever we do, we're going to be upsetting a group of people who would like something different. And this is certainly one of those times, hopefully, more infrequent, but nonetheless, this is going to be one of those times that there's a group of people that are going to be upset by the nature of that. The fact that Labor Day is the 6th, which is, a middle of it's a, large number in terms of where the beginning of September falls. It's not easy, and I certainly appreciate the work over the last months. I think the superintendent is being both kind and humble in the level of work that he and the assistant superintendent have put into this. I also join the superintendent in recognizing and thanking the work that the WEA has done to kind of work, with us. I think there was a strong recognition that needs to be greatly, well, not only recognized but appreciated. That really creative energies that everyone was trying to, bring us to a good place that was in the best interest of students and families. This was just one of those. This was just one of those years that, like I said earlier, a perfect storm of complicated, layers, right? That didn't land us in a place that everyone could feel good about. I think that the calendar that ultimately the superintendent presented 2 weeks ago, that is before us tonight, is certainly the very best choice that we have among really difficult choices and challenges. So I again want to thank the superintendent for the frustration that I know has existed over something that more in any other year would be much more a routine that we'd be talking about in March or April, maybe, certainly. But this has consumed a lot of time. Probably time that was fairly well spent, I would hope. But we're at a point now on May 11th that families and students and teachers and everyone needs to land in a place and do the very best we can with a difficult year. I think we want nothing more, and I'm sure this is hopefully a universal. We want nothing more than to start the year with positive energy, with good thoughts, and with a collaborative spirit, knowing that 2021, 2022 school year is going to we're going to come back fighting and going to come back strong. And so I, again, just wanted to throw in my, final 2 cents that this is, I think, the best choice under a very difficult set of circumstances. And I want to thank all of those that contributed over the course of the weeks to bring us to a place that that at least we can put behind us and do, and then get back to the good work of getting kids back in school in September. So thank you, Doug. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Will, and everyone else that was part of this. And thanks to the community that in the last couple of weeks, in the last several days, have reached out to us to provide comments and insight and suggestions. They haven't gone unnoticed. Thank you.
So I'll close with, I can remember at one of our labor subcommittee meetings a number of weeks ago where the calendar first came up and the complicatedness of it became clear pretty quickly. That we had the late Labor Day, we had the Jewish holiday, we had the ability to come back, the contract kind of allowed to come back prior to Labor Day. And I remember my initial reaction to if we came back prior to Labor Day, my thought was, my goodness, in the 9 years that my kids have been in school, my kids have never come back before Labor Day. And that just is such a big change. And ultimately, I feel like that if we are going to do that, we need to give families a lot of notice, because that just is not the norm for families. And so I want to encourage the labor subcommittee, which I will not be a part of anymore, to get the conversation about calendars going early this next time around, so that we don't get caught kind of late in the game, trying to still figure out the best way to bring this forward. I think there were pros and cons of going before Labor Day, going after Labor Day. I am in support of the calendar that administration has put forward. But I also know that there are pros and cons, and different people feel differently about it. And as Tom said, there are going to be people who are going to be unhappy with this decision. But I think ultimately, we are very late in the game to be making a pretty fundamental change if we were to say that we wanted students back in before Labor Day. So with that, I believe, Amy Lehman.
All right, I just have a quick question. When it says first day for all students, is that including kindergarten? Because sometimes they would come in the day after, like an orientation.
Yes, Amy, so that was the case in the past, and recently that has changed a little bit to be more consistent across all of the elementary schools. So it will be the first day for all students, pre-K to 12.
Okay,
Pre-K
thank
to
you.
post, I should say.
Any other questions? So I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Ms. Bayer,
Yes.
Mr. Markham,
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Piscadlo,
Yes.
and Ms. Wall.
Yes.
We got one more item on your agenda.
We do. It's the physical restraint of students policy. We put this on the table in the last meeting. This is policy number 1012/R. This was cited in our coordinated program review. This is to comply with the updates of the CMR that has been changed at the state level. We are following the new guidance, and us kind of approving this policy or making a motion to approve and getting it onto our website would just make us, it would just make our paperwork more up to date, is really what it will do.
So if I may, I would make a motion, move that the school committee approve updated physical restraint of students, policy number 1012-R, as presented.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote. Judy?
Ms. Bayer,
Yes.
Mr. Markham,
Yes.
Mr. Boudreau,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Piscadlo,
Yes.
and Ms. Wall.
Yes.
Okay. So with that, we finish up with Superintendent Lyons' remarks. And we're on to subcommittee reports. The Finance and Facilities Subcommittee did meet last week on the 6th. We spoke about a number of things, mostly about kind of preparation for town meeting. We talked a little bit about the stabilization fund and kind of that we would be asking for a transfer of money to support out-of-district special ed expenses. Bob Schiroli gave an update on facilities. He mentioned the fact that the MSBA had approved our OPM, which was mentioned earlier. We did talk about, I requested that we spend some time at a future meeting talking about our long-term building plan with everything that's going on with development in town, that we probably need to spend a little bit of time about thinking about long-term plans. We talked a little bit about capital requests that had been approved that were then kind of brought to town meeting and approved. And I think that was kind of the majority of what we talked about. And we are, like I said at the beginning of the meeting, we're scheduled to meet next Thursday morning. Tom, any updates on labor and personnel?
No, there were no updates. We did have a meeting last Thursday evening with the executive board, or some members of the executive board from the WEA. That was an executive session between the Labor Relations Subcommittee and the WEA members. And we should schedule an executive session of the full school committee at some point to be briefed on that.
I have that noted for our
That'd be
next
great.
meeting. Okay,
That'd
so
be
we can connect on that. Anything else?
No.
Okay. And then we would not have updates from student services or policy and communications unless you have anything, Doug.
Not at this point. If I can just add, I think we'd like to, future agenda item in regard to MSBA, I think we'd like to have our project manager, our new OPM, come to school committee and give us an update on the new work that the feasibility and the next steps. So that's forthcoming.
Okay.
So that was asked about in agenda items in our last meeting.
Mhm.
And so we've done a little work in the interim, and I think that they'll be able to attend, I think, in our next meeting.
The next May meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah, we'll start the meetings a week from tomorrow at 8:30, I believe. So I am taking suggestions for nicknames for the two Amy's, so they don't get too subcommittee discussion.
So on the future dates and agenda items, so before next meeting, we had the high school project update, which I think the idea was to give the whole committee kind of that timeline of what are the big milestones, and how long does it take to get to them, so that everybody has a general understanding of kind of where we are and what are the big milestones that are coming.
Correct.
That'll be great if the OPM can come in also.
That's the plan.
And so so first of all, our next meeting is Tuesday, May 25th at 7:30. I originally thought that we had 3 additional meetings left, but Doug and I were talking about the calendar and that typically we meet twice in May and only once in June, because the second June meeting would be after the end of school. So I just wanted committee members kind of aware of that we have one more meeting in May and the first meeting in June will happen. As you guys all know, I sent an email out looking for summer vacation schedules, trying to plan for some meetings over the summer. I think it is going to be important that we stay in touch, particularly as we work to get kids back to school kind of in the most normal way possible in September. Also trying to get the retreat scheduled, which is turning out to be slightly more complicated than I had hoped with everybody's vacation schedules. So I'm still at the drawing board on that, but we'll spend some time this week trying to get my arms around whether there's a possible date. There's no way we're gonna be able to get 2 dates. So we're gonna have to do it in one and see if we can find a date that's gonna work for everybody.
If we can't find a date, would we move it to the fall?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I think the sooner the better, but if we can't make it work this summer, then absolutely we would find a date in the fall. I don't wanna wait until December, like we have in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And so I'm still working that. And then the most important update on the softball game. So we're still working on that date. We had a potential date that I didn't think was gonna work, and Doug and I are kind of going back and forth on some other possible dates. We have when the field is available, so we need to get on that to see if we can find a date that's gonna work for everybody. So more to come on that front. School committee comments. Stephen, I'll have you go first. If you have anything to say in closing.
Well, we just passed last week our Teacher Appreciation Week, and through social media and whatnot, and having friends in other schools, I got to see a lot of that sort of community outpouring, and it was great. And one added benefit that I get from being on APTO at the Woodville School is I get to see some of those thank you letters from some of the teachers. And so I saw one that struck a nerve, which was that this particular teacher was expressing how at this point in the year, they're dealing with sort of rolling out MCAS. They've been going this long through this whole process, just everything going back fully. They were feeling really under pressure. And so to have this sort of 5 days of sort of being doted on a little bit, and then to sort of culminate in everything that happened at the end of the week, it recharged this particular individual, and they were expressing that their team felt the same way. So I think one thing out of this that I've seen is that sort of hypercharged community fellowship, you know, between you know, Wakefield proper and our school, you know, district personnel, and it's been great. So just kind of lifts your spirits a little bit. And I think that's about it. Hope everyone have a good week.
Thanks, Stephen. Mike?
Sure. You know, I just enjoy our invited guests all the time. But when Danielle Collins and the Youth Council come, that's a tough act to beat. So I get so inspired by both of them, their enthusiasm, their passion for what they do. So keep those great guests coming. I think it adds so much to the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Kevin?
No, I'll just echo what Stephen said about Teacher Appreciation Week. So I think it was well deserved for reasons that I already had stated earlier. That's all I have for this week.
Thanks. Amy Lehman?
Thank you. Last week, Wednesday, some of us postponed to Thursday, was the walk to school day, which was nice to see, an inch closer to normal. We had to do it virtually last year, so some of the schools postponed it to Thursday, and it turned out to be a really nice day, and it was really great to see a lot of kids and some of their parents walking to the elementary schools. And I just wanted to note, Susie, that your nameplate doesn't reflect your promotion title.
Oh, geez, it must be ordered. Thanks for noticing, though. Amy Wall.
This might be a little premature, but Doug, earlier you had talked about speaking with the police about the traffic outside the Galvin.
Yep.
And then you just brought up about the OPM for the high school coming in.
Yep.
I know obviously with big projects that we always have a peer review with traffic advisory that would be handling when a high school, when we get to that point, that's something that will happen. I'm just wondering if maybe we can make a note of it, that if we could have a traffic study that would also include ways going down to the Galvin, if that makes sense.
So
I don't know if so.
It might be a separate project. I hear you, but are you thinking we could link the two?
Not link the two per se. Sometimes on zoning, sometimes, for instance, if we have a project in front of us that we have them go in front of TAC,
yeah,
we can set the parameters of, we want you to go, you know, include this street or include that street. I'm just curious with the new high school and with the added traffic we have now with the Galvin,
yeah,
if we could maybe include Nahant Street or something where people have kids at both schools that are maybe going to be going back and forth to both. I don't know if that's something that should be included, but maybe the OPM is something we can talk about with them.
I think we can absolutely do that, Amy. I will also share with the new committee, and some of our veteran committee have been on, and they know this. In the pre-feasibility work that was done in 2016, and then again in 2019, there was a proposal to align Nahant Street and kind of create an intersection with a light, which could revolutionize traffic, right? And so the other piece, as we get back to school, the other change is going to be, there's going to be more people carpooling, there's going to be bus transportation, so there'll be more students in less cars and less parents having to drop off all of their children. So that's a piece, but I hear you loud and clear. It's duly noted. Duly noted.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that's all I have for tonight.
Thanks. Tom?
Thank you. Just join colleagues in thanking teachers for not only a great Teacher Appreciation Week, but for everything that the faculty and staff have done all this year. That is certainly Teacher Appreciation Week is well understated. Also want to thank the members of town meeting for supporting the school department budget last Saturday at town meeting, as well as the needs for the special education fund, and thank our colleagues and partners at the town hall for working with us in making that come to be. So, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. I think I'm going to forego my comments. I talked a lot tonight, and I need to get this mask off. So I'm gonna forego comments. I think this was a great meeting. I think we talked about a lot of topics. I will say, I didn't say it when we were talking about the calendar. I do, and I'm looking at you, Will, straight. I want to say it's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last couple of days, better than I did. And I know this has not been kind of an easy discussion, and it hasn't been an easy kind of day for me. You know, the calendar is always a tough topic. It's particularly tough this year, and I wish that it wasn't. And so I will close with that. And I think we can call the meeting to a close. Oh, you have a motion.
I do. Move the school committee adjourn its meeting of Tuesday, May 11, 2021.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call?
Ms. Baer,
Yes?
Mr. Markham,
Yes?
Mr. Boudreau,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Ingles,
Yes?
Mr. Piscadlo,
Yes.
Ms. Wall.
Yes.
All right. See you guys in 2 weeks on the 25th.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye now.